Okie dokie, I believe we are all the way live. Hello and welcome to my graveyard. I'm your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking names and kicking candy ass, live and in living color here with you only on the graveyard. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and if there was ever more of an appropriate time to do so, here's Johnny. Yes, live and in living color tonight, John Grande, live in Grande's graveyard here to discuss one of, if not arguably, the greatest filmmaker of all time, Mr. Stanley Kubrick. Now, I know in past episodes I have said that Dario Argento is the all-time greatest film director, and I mean, part of me still feels that way. I still love Argento, but if there was ever somebody that is as good, if not better, and possibly the best ever, it's the guy we're going to be discussing here tonight, Stanley Kubrick. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who not only made masterpieces, but also touched oh so many genres. I mean, he did black comedy, he did anti-war, he did heist movies, he did exploitation movies, he dabbled in horror movies, war movies, period pieces, dramas, just every single genre under the sun, and it feels like Stanley Kubrick touched it. And of course, most infamously, possibly the science fiction effort that he created. And it's not just that he dabbled in with these genres, he made movies that defined those genres. Like 2001 is the sci-fi movie. It really is. The Shining for a lot of people, which coincidentally, I did not know this when I planned and booked this show over a month ago. Today is the 44th anniversary of The Shining. So happy birthday to this son of a gun who turned 44 years old today. Really crazy coincidence. I saw it today on my lunch. I'm like, holy shit, I'm doing the show today on Stanley Kubrick and we'll be discussing The Shining. So, yeah, I mean, shit just happens. I don't know. But I like I was saying, Kubrick made movies that defined their genres. For a lot of people, Full Metal Jacket or Paths of Glory, they define anti-war genre. It's just simply incredible how many genre-defining movies that this guy made. And tonight we're going to count down my personal top 10. Of course, he did make only 13 feature films throughout his entire career, so 3 will be left out. I will mention what those 3 are before we get into the 10. This way, if I don't want to waste anybody's time if they're hoping that Fear and Desire will be number 1. I'm just going to tell you right now, Fear and Desire is at the bottom, and I won't be discussing on the show. But let me not neglect the chat. Let me say hi to y'all. Let's see. We got Miss C in the house. Ciao, Grande and Graveyardians. Welcome, Miss C. Hope all is well with you. What up, Private Joker? Oh, my goodness. Look at this guy. Hearst Hill, Double H in the hazy. What's going on? Or should we call you Matthew Modine tonight? You're normally HH, so tonight can you be MM? Can you be the Joker? I think that would be all. Is it him or is it just me? I'm sorry, I don't do a good John Wayne. Ciao, Grande. Mateo is here. Excited for something different. My top 3 is Orange, Shining, and Full Metal. Special mention to Spartacus. Hi to all the Graveyardians. Well, I think that's a kick-ass top 3. And spoiler alert, I might have some in common there. I might have some, if not all, in common there. But you got to stay tuned to find that out, my friend. We got Anthony in the hazy. Grande plus Kubrick. Let's go. Hell yeah, man. It's only the greatest filmmaker of all time. I'm going to have to say it. He is the greatest of all time. Stanley Kubrick. It's really hard to argue how great he was. And not just, all week when I was doing show prep and reading stuff about him, a lot of people say, oh, he was a perfectionist. He was a perfectionist. I get that to a degree. I don't think that defines Stanley, though. I think Stanley was a wild artist, a guy that somehow always was able to integrate humor into his films, and at the same time though was able to keep those movies going and never kind of tonally messed with them. It's incredible. Like Clockwork Orange, I take it very seriously as this exploitation kind of punk rock film, whereas there's a lot of humor in it that is laugh out loud funny, but it doesn't at all hurt the impact and message and vibe that movie has. And there's a lot of movies like that. Like The Shining has some laugh moments with the weird bear blowjob scene and just weird off stuff that you're like, huh? Like, why is that in my horror movie? But he somehow always made it work, man. He was just a wild artist. Ciao, Grande. Buenasera. I totally agree. Kubrick is my favorite director. He knew every facet of filmmaking process well. It wouldn't be a Stanley Kubrick spotlight without Kubrick Lover 1972. So I'm very excited. Kubrick Lover, you're going to have to do this for me whether you like it or not, buddy, because I need to know. I need your top 13 to number 1, worst to first Kubrick movies. Rank them. I need to see it before the night's out. If you want to do it along with me, if you want to give me your number 10 as I do my number 10 and count all the way to the top, that's fun too. And if you guys want to play along, by all means, if you've seen all of Kubrick's movies, give me your top 10s tonight. We got people saying hi to one another. Hey, Kubrick. Yeah, I mean, who better to have in the chat than Kubrick lover on the Kubrick show? Like a Clockwork Orange t-shirt, Grande. That must be your favorite film of his, which I think you've said. You've got the poster behind as well. I do have the poster right here. Yes, that is one of the great. Granted, it's a cheap poster. I think they're like $5. That's a reprint. This one's an original. This one's a reprint, but I do love the freaking movie, so that is what it is. Hoping to hear your thoughts on Kubrick's The Killing. Spoiler alert, you will hear my thoughts on The Killing. That made the top 10. That's a really underrated movie. Grande, you need to take a stress pill and think things over with this stream. Oh boy. Glad to video this. Well, it's only real. The real colors of the real world only seem really real when you video them on a screen. If I may quote a legendary Malcolm McDowell himself. Alan for sure, Grande. Hell yeah, Grande. He did multiple takes. Exactly. We'll get into some of that once to get to stuff like Barry Lyndon taking 57 takes to do shit with Melissa Berenson. Just crazy. I think Clockwork Orange was when he changed to make a low budget film. He was going to make Napoleon before that, of course, yes, and that ends up molding into what Barry Lyndon would go on to be, so very interesting. I love Malcolm McDowell's performance in Orange. Why do you think he was overseen by the establishment? So, fun fact, and in my show prep, I didn't realize this until I did show prep. There's only been 2 actors ever in Stanley Kubrick movies to be nominated for Best Actor or Actress at the Academy Awards. No actress has ever been nominated, actually, for a Kubrick film. Now, the only other 2, I believe, was Peter Sellers in Strangelove and Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange. Now, you can double check me on that, but I believe that is the case. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I think those are the only 2 actors ever nominated for a Kubrick film, which is just crazy considering how big of a director this was and how many great, perfect movies that he made. And even at the same time, too, another thing I'll say is that he never really worked with anybody all that big to the point where he would lose control over them. And that's a big facet of Kubrick's early part of his career. There were some pictures that he did and he felt that he lost control, Spartacus being the main one, where he was kind of a director for hire, and thus he hated Spartacus and always resented Spartacus and insisted from Spartacus, after Spartacus, he would just go to England, make all of his films under his control with no stars too big to say, hey, I have a say in this. So therefore, Kubrick would always have the creative control over his work. And thank God he did that, because if he doesn't do that, who knows? Who knows how much worse these movies could have turned out if you had this big studio and big budgeted star not looking eye to eye with Stanley. You know, who knows what happens from there. So I'm happy that he got away from that. But I agree with you. Malcolm McDowell should have won. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was the year French Connection won Best Picture. So Clockwork was up for Best Picture. And I'm assuming Gene Hackman won Best Actor for The French Connection. I love The French Connection. I mean, it's a great film. There's no doubt. But for me, I mean, Clockwork Orange should have not only won Best Picture, and I think Malcolm McDowell should have won Best Actor too. I met Malcolm McDowell, very nice guy, very brief discussion between the two of us. It was a long line type of deal, and I was really young. I mean, I must have been 11 years. So I would have been like 15, 16 when I met him. Very nice guy. Took a picture with him. Very cool. I think he should have won an Oscar. I think he got robbed. You know, it is what it is, though. I mean, it happens. All I know is The Shining, which King is vocal about not liking. Okay, fair enough. Stephen King said the worst adaptation of his books was The Shining and Carrie is the best. And that's funny. Those were the first 2, weirdly enough, new. I think that's what makes Stanley Kubrick such a great director, is that he went from doing such dramatic movies to many dark movies. Sure, Slasher Fred checks in. Well, Fred. Another thing with Kubrick, too, before we get into this whole list, is that he started off as like a photographer. He started off as this guy who was just a photographer, and then he got into becoming a filmmaker, of course, born and raised in the Bronx, and then, of course, fell in love with movies and wanted to make movies. And, of course, the 3 movies, I guess I'll spoil them now, that are not going to make the top 10. This is going to be like an actor spotlight, but with a director. So we will talk about my top 10 from Kubrick in that order. However, the fun part of this is he only made 13 movies, so we can discuss the 3 that don't make the list. Number 13, Fear and Desire, his first film. Really green film. You could tell that it was his first project. A lot of the audio, I think all of the audio was ADR'd in later. They didn't record sound on the set because there were so many problems, and Kubrick didn't believe in using boom mics at that time. So that movie's a mess from a technical standpoint even. Killer's Kiss, I put at number 12. Killer's Kiss has some very interesting things where he's experimenting with the camera. It tells this very honestly generic love story between a boxer and a woman. It's like a love triangle type of film, but he does do some interesting things with the camera. That's a movie worth watching if you want to see the up and coming or the rise of what would go on to be one of the great filmmakers. And then at number 11, I had Spartacus. Spartacus, again, I do think it's a really good movie. I do think it's a great war epic, but again, it's one of the least Kubrick movies. It's very much not his baby. It was something they didn't like the director they had, Tony Mann. And Tony Mann got fired about a week in. And then, of course, Kubrick was brought in. And all these actors, aside from Kirk Douglas, really didn't like him. Laurence Olivier did not like Stanley Kubrick. But of course, Kirk Douglas had worked with him on Paths of Glory, which does make the top 10. And he was like, you got to get this guy Kubrick. He's the next big thing. And little did Kirk Douglas probably know how right he was with that. Of course, Spartacus comes out and ends up being a really big hit. But it was the movie that made Kubrick kind of get away from studio pictures and into making independent films on his own. And I'm very happy that he did. But brief look back at the chat, and then we will get into this. Wish I didn't work on Thursday so I could catch the Graveyard Live. Dude, man, I appreciate you just stopping by. Thank you so much, Nate. Kubrick didn't do well in high school, just didn't have the interest in it. Well, he had a high IQ. I know that. Yo, Joe Mama in the Heezy. Hello, everyone. No, I'm Spartacus. Yes. If you've seen the movie Trumbo, explain a lot of the story of Spartacus. That's right. Trumbo's an awesome movie too. I actually agree with that. So, all right, without further ado, everyone, cheers to a safe, happy, healthy weekend. Oh, and we'll get underway with this list. To me, one of the must-own physical medias of all time is this set. And this is, I got this set from the United Kingdom. This is the UK version of the set. This is not the American version. It's Stanley Kubrick Visionary Filmmaker Collection. And it's this really cool little booklet set where all you get is, I believe it's 7 films from Kubrick, which is really cool. And of course, we get some of the box art. We got Lolita, 2001. We've got Clockwork and Barry Lyndon. We've got The Shining. This is actually the TV version of The Shining. So if you do own an individual release of this, you're getting a different cut here. That's something to mention if anyone sees this and wants to buy it. And of course, Full Metal Jacket. And finally, Eyes Wide Shut, and then Stanley Kubrick's documentary, A Life in the Pictures, which is like a 2.5-hour documentary on his entire career. Really cool stuff if you're a collector. Now, I know the U.S. version has 1 extra disc. It does have the Dr. Strangelove Blu-ray, which I only have the DVD here. I have the DVD for the longest time. I've never upgraded that movie. I don't know if there's a 4K of Strangelove, but I know there's a 4K of like The Killing, and I believe Paths of Glory might have one. I'm not sure. But to me, this is essential. If you're a Stanley Kubrick fan, I think this set is so, so vital. I know I've seen other ones where it has all of his films, but man, I don't think you could beat this. This or the American version, you really can't go wrong. And I'm super happy to own this. I got this for like $20 back in the day. I mean, you simply can't beat it. One of my favorite and prized possession physical media. And I do actually own quite other. I have several editions of Clockwork Orange of the 4K and the Blu-ray of Clockwork Orange. So definitely own a ton of these. Curious to hear your thoughts on Barry Lyndon. I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, I thoroughly enjoy it too, my friend. That's going to be there. Cheers. Hell yeah, man. Stanley Kubrick has also directed a film noir called The Killing. Slasher Fred, we're going to get there, buddy. Grande doesn't the UK cut The Shining? Yes, it did. It's the TV version of The Shining. So granted, I really need to upgrade this. This needs to be upgraded. I'm ashamed that I don't have the 4K of that. I'll just leave it at that. Yep, there are 2 4Ks. I've got the basic one. Okay. And I think it's longer. Yes, I have the full feature one. Sasha upgraded the artwork. Oh, that's right. Okay. Sasha does his custom ones. All right. So without further ado, let's get into my top 10. And I guess I can hold up the discs here and just do something a little bit different. I can hold up the discs as opposed to like sharing the screen or whatever. I think that would be something different. So this is a movie, of course, that, like almost all Kubrick films, was marred in a lot of controversy. It came out 4 months after his death, of course, in the year 1999. Some have said that Stanley considered this his biggest contribution to cinema and filmmaking. Some have said, like Arlie Ermy, that Kubrick called him on the phone 2 months before it came out and said, "This is the biggest piece of shit I was ever a part of. I'm ashamed of this movie, and I know the critics are going to shit on me." So I don't know who you believe. I don't know if you believe Arlie Ermy. I don't know if you believe Jan Harlan. There's so many stories as to what Stanley Kubrick really did think of this movie, and we'll never know because he died 4 months before it was seen in theaters theatrically. And of course, I'm talking about this little movie called Eyes Wide Shut. Yes, Eyes Wide Shut, which I can give a little bit better kind of view there. Brief plot synopsis. A Manhattan doctor embarks on a bizarre night-long odyssey after his wife's admission of unfulfilled longing. Yes, Eyes Wide Shut. Now, this before I did my show prep again, and I watched like 8 Kubrick films over the past 4 days, which is insane when you consider some of the run times of these movies. I gotta say that this one dropped the most. I would have had this in the number 4 slot because I made a list before the rewatches, and it's greatly different than after the rewatches. This one dropped the most. I had this at number 4. This dropped down to number 10 for me. Now, I still do really like the film. I like all these movies in the top 10. There's just no getting around it. I really enjoy all these movies. But this one I do feel kind of dropped off a little bit. Now, it basically tells the story of Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. They were, of course, married in real life at this time and, of course, making pictures and the whole thing. It's Cruise, it's Kidman, it's Kubrick, like all the "k" sounds on the poster and, you know, this classic visual of these two kissing and the primary lavender color in the film, which is very vital in the film. Tells the story of this couple. They go to this party. They're rich. They have it all. They have this beautiful child. It's Christmas time. What could possibly be horrible in your life? And of course, you know, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, after a night of smoking weed and having some limp sex, she tells Tom Cruise that there was one time that they were checking into a hotel and she kind of fell in love with this guy that was like a sailor marine looking guy. And she looked at him and fantasized this whole wild night with him. And she says that she would have completely dropped him, the child, everything she ever knew in her life just for one night of passion with this guy. And her monologue of delivering this to Tom Cruise just completely breaks him. He becomes distressed. He becomes sad. He just becomes distraught, just horrible, really fucks him up. And he decides, oh, okay, I got a call from a client. I have to go. He's like a doctor. And then basically he leaves the house and goes on this adventurous night in New York. And basically it starts off as small as visiting a patient that has just passed to visiting a call girl to all of a sudden finding himself at this like giant sex party, Fidelio. You know what that means if you've seen the movie, where people wear these masks and have these wild orgies. And Tom Cruise kind of finds himself in the middle of things that he shouldn't be in the middle of. And then the rest of the picture kind of plays out as this big mystery and consequences of what he did that night. I really liked the movie. There's no doubt about it. I really liked it from the first time I saw it. It has fallen for me a little bit, like I said, though. And that's why it finds itself here at number 10. Now, this is interesting in and of the fact that this came out 12 years after Full Metal Jacket. There was a 12-year gap. That's a huge gap. Of course, he wanted to make Aryan Papers in the early 90s, but Steven Spielberg beat him to it with a little movie called Schindler's List. He felt they were too similar, so he abandoned Aryan Papers. Then he wanted to do other projects. He eventually wanted to be a part of AI. Couldn't get anything going in the 90s, similar to like a George Romero. And then, of course, he finally crescendos with this movie here, which is the finale of his legacy, the finale of his work. And I do think it's quite good. Tom Cruise is a great lead in it. He's really good. I've never been big on Tom Cruise. I really like him in this movie. The colors are really good. There's a lot of interesting, steady tracking shots. There's a lot of Kubrick visuals. It visually does work, and it visually is appealing. Now, do I have some problems with it? Absolutely. I do think Nicole Kidman is kind of bland in the film. Her line delivery, don't really know what she was going for upon a rewatch. Didn't mind her the first few times, but upon a rewatch, I'm like, damn, what the hell was Nicole Kidman doing? Like, she kind of draws out her lines. If you watch it, watch her performance. Like, she draws out everything she says. It's very weird. But I thought it had a lot to say about the horrors of a dysfunctional marriage, the horrors of what happens when you have it all, but then you want more. Like, you have everything at your disposal. What more could you possibly want? And it's a age-old tale where happiness is not earned through money. Happiness is not earned through your soulmate or whatever the hell they consider themselves to be. Sometimes, you'll yearn for things that you can't have, and that would destroy all that you've worked to have. And I think this is a movie quite much about that. And I like the picture. I think it's a good movie. It's definitely one, though, that has fallen off a little bit. I don't know why. It's just kind of missing amongst these other works that I've watched. I felt it fell off a little bit. I don't know. That's just me, though. But let's hear what you guys have to say about Eyes Wide Shut, because this seems to be a very controversial work. It definitely seems to be one that a lot of people don't discuss. Never seen this one, curious. It's totally worth a watch. It's, I think, a really good movie. And it's very sad to me that this was it for Kubrick. And I know that there's all, like I said, the contrasting stories. Like Arlie Ermy said, Stanley Kubrick called him up like 2 months before he died and said, man, he said, I'm fucking ashamed of this movie. But then Jan Harlan said they screened it for Kubrick's entire family like 6 days before he died. And he nudged Jan and said, that's my greatest accomplishment and tribute to cinema. Like, that's my greatest contribution to cinema. So I don't know who you want to believe. I mean, that he either he hated it and considered it his worst, or he loved it and considered it the best thing he ever did. I don't think it's close to the best thing he ever did. I really don't. I don't. Maybe there was a recency bias when Kubrick allegedly said what he said, or maybe Arlie Ermey's telling the truth and he didn't like the movie. I don't know. I know a lot of people saw this and did not like it. Upon its release, it was a movie that it seemed like critics went easier on, probably in light of Stanley's death. Like, let's be honest, when somebody dies, all of a sudden they become a martyr. Like Ultimate Warrior, look at that guy. Everybody hated Ultimate Warrior. All of a sudden he dies and they made the Warrior Award, and Ted DiBiase's on Round Table. Oh, I know I had my differences with him. I'm like, you hated his guts. Like, don't tell me now because he died tragically, do you love the guy? Like, come on. Like, I don't know. But I definitely felt the critics were like that, where they were like, oh, this is really sad. He was one of the best ever. Let's just put his last movie over. And I think that's what happened critically when this movie came out, because it seemed like a lot of critics that generally would be on him for making something like this did not eat him alive. They put the movie over. Curious, though. I think that's a big theme in the movie, is curiosity, is being curious about your sexual desires and your sexual fantasies. It's really a kind of look at the dark sexual fantasies of ourselves and our minds. Who couldn't be happy with Nicole Kidman in 1999 as their wife, and having a beautiful child, and having all this money and luxury, and being a successful doctor? Sometimes that just doesn't cut it for some people. Sometimes you want more. And as sick as that sounds, I think there's a dark side to be had here. And there's a lot of mystery in it. There's a lot of things where if you watch very closely, like Sidney Pollack is in the film. He's a famous actor / director. He's in the movie as this kind of critical character that we don't see all that much. And you insinuate and see that he might have been the ringleader at this party where all these people had these sex masks and stuff going on. If you look very closely at the pool table, he's kind of playing with this ball on a pool table. It's very similar to the motion that the lead guy at this party was doing. If you look very closely, I've seen these movies enough to kind of be like, wow. Brittany Ward is in the house. Brittany threw up a awesome, I'm sorry, I missed your original comment. Hey, Grande and Gravy audience, I'm here for The Shining, and I'm interested to hear about Clockwork Orange. Well, you've come to the right place, my friend, and happy 44th birthday of The Shining. Had no goddamn clue until today. So really crazy that it timed it this way, and I'm stoked about it. So it's funny, it happened earlier this year with Dracula 74. Of course, Dan Curtis's Dracula. We did that show on the 50th anniversary, and I found out on the show. So weird. I mean, it just seems to be, a year of coincidences. Eyes Wide Shut was the very last movie that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman did before they got divorced, and it was the last Kubrick movie he did in his lifetime. So it was a lot of lasts. And I know I had quite a few teachers over the years. I had a college professor that he claimed Stanley Kubrick was the best filmmaker ever until he made this. Like, he hated this movie. I'll never forget, like, the utter hate that this guy had for Eyes Wide Shut. And I don't see that. There's no way to hate this movie. It's not a bad film. Nicole in the movie is just stunning. She is. I think the movie is okay. I love the dreamlike atmosphere of the movie. Thank you for mentioning that. I know a lot of people rip the movie apart for, it's not New York, Grande. You would know. You live in New York, And I totally agree. It's not New York. You could clearly fucking tell it's not New York. It's fucking England. that's dressed up to look like New York. But, and I've heard Martin Scorsese say this, it's like New York if it was visualized in a dream. And that's a really big thing that I think distinguishes this movie upon something that was shot in Vancouver to look like New York, or upon something to be dressed up in another way. It does feel very much like New York, but in a fever dream. And Tom Cruise just kind of walking around in the wintertime with a large black trench coat, just kind of walking the streets. And it's magical in that way. Like, it's very simple. I like the score, the piano score. Boom, 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 boom. And then he'll throw a ping kind of in there to throw you off. I liked that. I thought that was good. I think Mateo makes a great point there, though. I agree. It does have a very nice dreamlike atmosphere. I agree, though. It is just okay. I don't love it either. When I first saw it, I did, but it's fallen a little bit. Grande, Eyes Wide Shut is an underrated film. It's one of those films that you have to give multiple watches and maybe appreciate it more as time goes by, and maybe older people would like it more. And I think I would even go a step further with that. I think all of Kubrick's works are like that. The more you watch them, the more you like them. Like Paths of Glory was definitely the case. Barry Lyndon is definitely the case, where the more I've seen those films, the more I've liked them. This one, I would say, has been the inverse of that. I think the more I've seen this, actually has hurt it. I will give it a very long time before I watch Eyes Wide Shut again, and we'll see. It does. It's the deconstruction of a marriage. Even though they don't break up, even though they do stay together, even though Kubrick does throw the very last line of dialogue ever said in one of his films ends up being a humorous joke. We have to do something immediately. What's that? Fuck. Credits. Like, I remember when I first saw that, I belly laughed. I was like, what the fuck? Like, his entire career ends on fuck. That's the last line I said in a Stanley Kubrick film. I liked Eyes Wide Shut. It's decent. I agree. I think it's decent too. Kubrick also wanted to make AI. That's right. And unfortunately could not. And he asked Steven Spielberg to do it, which, I don't know, that's a movie I'm very lukewarm on. AI. AI was made in a tribute to Kubrick. We got Synthetic. Kubrick was great for sure. Huge fan. Awesome. Maybe people got upset with Kubrick with Eyes Wide Shut because they think they're going to get another Strangelove, 2001, Clockwork, Shining. And that's, again, a case of a lot of his movies. You go in thinking you're going to get one thing, you get something else, you walk out mad because you didn't get what you expected. That's not how it should work. I mean, you might walk in expecting one thing, but if you get something else, that doesn't mean it's necessarily bad or poor. 2001 is probably the greatest cinematic experience I've ever had. Apocalypse Now is a close second. Great movies, and 2001 is on this list. Clockwork is third, and Kubrick is a master of what he did. All hail Kubrick. We got Mystic Mac in the Heezy. What's going on, Mystic Mac? I forget what you said your favorite crew. I think you said 2001. I forget. I don't know if you commented or not. I think you did. Absolutely love Eyes Wide Shut. Watch Eyes Wide Shut, Nate. Okay, so we got people defending Eyes Wide Shut in the chat. Very nice to see. Kubrick tortured his actors. Not all of them. I know there's the famous, with Shelley Duvall. Killer's Kiss kind of seemed like inspiration to many boxing movies, and that may be. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, it's definitely not a plot like a Raging Bull or a Rocky, but it definitely has that setting. I would say that. Kubrick didn't end up making AI, artificial intelligence, because it took him forever. And what's crazy about him is Tom Cruise actually told stories and interviews in this where Stanley Kubrick was still apparently trying to edit The Shining. In like 1997, he went to his house and he walked in, and apparently Stanley Kubrick was messing around with some of the prints of The Shining. Like, that was 17 years later, and this guy was like, fuck it, I'm just going to, like, play around with the editing with this. And they were like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, oh, just editing some stuff, like, nothing much. He's like, bro, it's The Shining. Maybe it was the Kurosawa-made Ran, maybe Bresson with Le Argent. They could have made films like Eyes Wide Shut with age. There's another director I'm trying to think of that could only make it. Why was production so long on this one? So, towards the end, it just seemed to be a theme. Like, okay, he makes Strangelove in 64. He makes 2001 in 68. So those are, 3-4 year. Then Clockwork 71, 3 years. Barry Lyndon 75, 4 years. The Shining 5 years. And then after that, it was 7 years until Full Metal, 12 until Eyes Wide Shut. And like I said, he wanted to make Aryan Papers, which was going to be a look at the Holocaust. And of course, Steven Spielberg had to come out with Schindler's List, and Stanley Kubrick gave up. He abandoned the project. He was like, number one, I can't beat that movie. Number two, it's too similar. There's no point. And he completely abandoned that picture because Steven Spielberg makes Schindler's List. So because of Schindler's List, we were essentially robbed the Kubrick film, which is but again, Schindler's List is a great movie. So, I mean, definitely not upset about it. That film he made, I'll try to think of some stream. Okay. I saw The Shining and The Drive-In as a kid, stuck with me. Oh, dude, yeah, that movie does tend to stick with people. We got Merdsy in the house. Hey, what's up, Graveyard fam? Let's celebrate some Kubrick. Hell yeah, man. Let's celebrate some Kubrick, man. Let's go through these a little quicker here. Mentioned Scorsese. You convinced former girlfriend to go see Eyes Wide Shut on a trip with her parents. They were mad at me. Why? What? Eyes Wide Shut's cool. I saw Eyes Wide Shut is on the doorstep of being my favorite Kubrick film. All right, Alpha. All right, so there you go. Somebody has Eyes Wide Shut towards the top. That's a very interesting choice. I like how you see the mask on the bed at the end of Eyes Wide, and then that's when Tom Cruise just breaks down. I'll tell you everything. Tom Cruise is great in the movie. Tom Cruise could have gotten a nomination. I think he's really, really good. And that's coming from someone who's not a big Cruise fan, for sure. I watch Eyes Wide Shut every Christmas. Oh, that's pretty cool. Very cool. 2001, The Shining, Clockwork. Okay, very cool. So Eyes Wide Shut, definitely worth a watch. Definitely a solid picture. I really like it. It comes in at number 10. It's fallen off a little bit, but nothing crazy. Definitely nothing, not a crazy drop off or anything like that. But it's definitely a good movie. I think it's still worth the watch. And it does have that surreal, dreamlike atmosphere that really does work for it. Moving on to the next number here, of course, this came out the year. It actually celebrates its 60th anniversary some point this year. I don't know when. Watch it be today, and it's like I didn't even know. I'm going to actually check to make sure. Let's see. No, okay, it's already passed. It's past its 60-year anniversary in January. This, of course, his satirical black comedy, infamous, of course, for Peter Sellers, the lead actor, playing not one, not two, but three separate roles. This is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Yes, brief plot synopsis. An unhinged American general orders a bombing attack on the Soviet Union, triggering a path to nuclear holocaust that a war room full of politicians and generals frantically try to stop. Yes, Dr. Strangelove will meet again. Don't know where. Don't know where. One of the best black comedies of all time. And again, we were talking about Malcolm McDowell being robbed. Peter Sellers should have won Best Actor for this. I think whatever his name was for My Fair Lady won. Fuck My Fair Lady. Dr. Strangelove should have won. I mean, there's no doubt. I don't know why. I guess this white case is just messing with my camera's like white balance here. But yes, this is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. This was just a great idea. Of course, Kubrick was coming off Lolita, which was a very controversial, all of his movies was very fucking controversial. But this was such a good idea to kind of take elements of Lolita, the dark comedy, and focus an entire picture around it. And of course, you get Peter Sellers back from Lolita. You take that kind of branch. He's now in this movie as the lead. You bring back a guy like Sterling Hayden, who was in The Killing, as the lead. And then, of course, you have a George C. Scott, who's one of the great American actors that there ever was, great character actors. And this is right around the time, I think a few years after The Hustler had come out. And George C. Scott, in my opinion, steals that movie from Paul Newman. This is just one of the best black comedies of all time. Of course, it focuses on Sterling Hayden. He orders a bomb assault on the Soviet Union. And of course, we follow him and Peter Sellers playing one role. We follow these idiots in a war room, generals, politicians. Of course, the president played by Peter Sellers, one of the generals played by George C. Scott. And then, of course, we also follow these guys on a ship going for the bombing. So there's James Earl Jones. There's Slim Pickens. There's so many great actors in this movie. I mean, you throw a rock at this movie, you're going to hit a great actor. Just amazing the amount of great talent that you have in this movie. And it's just one of the most funny movies. Like some of the scenes with fucking Peter Sellers calling the Russian ambassador on the phone, Dmitry, he made that and improvised all of that stuff. And it's the funniest stuff in the movie. Yes, Dmitry, I'm doing fine. Oh, you're doing fine? That's fine, Dmitry. It's good to be fine. Like, I don't know why it's so funny, but it is. And some of the shit with George C. Scott, his girlfriend calls him, yes, I love you too. I mean, this is very important. You don't just get calls at 3 a.m. in the morning. And he's constantly chewing the gum like a fucking animal. He's chain chewing all this gum. You have some of the stuff with Sterling Hayden, who's just completely lost his fucking mind. And Peter Sellers sells it with his eyes, sells it with his expression, sells it with his face. of like he's like, oh my God, this guy's fucking nuts, but he's trying to kind of convince him, hey, like maybe we should switch this whole decision. Just great stuff. And I liked that because I'm not a political person. I like that this movie is basically saying anyone in government, politics, generals, whatever, you're all a bunch of fucking idiots. And I love it for that. That's the main reason I love Doctor Strangelove. It's the whole commentary on you're all fucking idiots, be gone type of deal. And that's basically what happens. The entire thing is a whole misunderstanding. And oh my God, we're going to bomb the Soviet. And well, accidentally, Dmitri, we sort of ordered the bomb. Well, I'm sorry, Dmitri. Like, what do you mean why I don't always call you casually Dmitri? Yes, Dmitri. It's great, man. Peter Sellers is electric in this film. He's so much fun. And of course, again, this was something that because of Lolita and the multiple characters he plays in that, Kubrick was like, let me try to center a film around him. And it's like 90 minutes. It's not over long. It's not one of his most stylish films. And a lot of, I would say, the airplane sequences are dated compared to the movie that he would go on to make 4 years down the road. Some of the aerial shots are dated, but I think that this is very funny and just memorable, like there's the whole scene towards the end where it's Peter Sellers, hey, I've got to call them. I've got to call off the bomb. I have the password. Please, can you give me some change? And the fucking guy, the general in charge of him, he's giving him this hard time. Please, sir, shoot that Coca-Cola machine. There could be change in it. This is a matter of life and death of the world. And, well, I'll do that, sir. But I'll tell you what, if this is not as big of a deal as you make it out to be, then you're going to have to answer to the Coca-Cola company, and shoots the fucking thing. Like, I don't know, man. I just thought this was a blast, a really funny, great satirical satire on government and the war and all these things. And it's just really funny, man. I love Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. I think it's a great, great comedy. And it's probably one of the more different Kubrick films. Like, there's not a lot like there are other movies that have the black comedy elements, but this one's a black comedy from start to finish. You have Slim Pickens, and he's reading off the stuff, and we got the cavalry, we got some rope, we got some men. Yeah, this sounds like a great weekend in Vegas, and it's fucking just so great. And Slim Pickens riding the bomb, yeah, great. And of course, Dr. Strangelove himself, I can walk. And he keeps trying to hold his arm down. Just, oh my God, man. It's just a great, funny comedy, man. Really, really great one, man. Comments now. Fever Dreamland Theater. Kubrick was editing Shining in 97. That's very interesting. Maybe he was considering a new cut. That's right. Yeah. And when I heard that story, like that, I believe that happened. Like that is how crazy Stanley Kubrick was. A movie that came out 17 years prior. He was fucking with it, 2 years before he died. Hey, how you doing, buddy? Saw the new Planet of the Apes. It was awesome. Anthony Showbot, welcome, my friend. Hope all's well with you. A perfect film. You'd think the top heads of the government would make sure to not have gaps in their security and not do anything to go wrong, yet it does and could be a warning to us. Sure. Yeah, it's a classic and beautiful Criterion release. They have a lot of Kubrick's movies on Criterion. I think Barry Lyndon's Criterion. I think The Killing, although the version of The Killing to get is the Kino release. Definitely get the Kino release. That's a 4K. Going to look amazing. Paths of Glory is Criterion. A lot of the Criterion releases, a lot of Kubrick films did end up being released on Criterion. George C. Scott is on fire as usual. Absolutely. Dr. Strangelove's all-time classic, and another one that gets better with every watch. I agree. That's a movie. When I first saw it, I just didn't get it. I was like, maybe I'm too young. And I probably was. I saw it when I was like 10 or 11. And I was like, okay. I mean, it was all right. I didn't find it as funny as I do now. It's just such different, dry, satirical humor. And I just didn't get it at the time. But now I think it's great. The line, gentlemen, you can't find here. This is the war room. Yes, that's a classic, of course. And they had even discussed doing a pie fight like they end up doing in Dawn of the Dead, which I always am grateful that they didn't do, because if they did, it would have been, they ripped that off from Dr. Strangelove. I'm so glad Kubrick decided not to do the pie fight scene. Although it would have been funny in this film, I do think, and I agree with Kubrick, that it would have ruined the satirical comedy aspect of the film. It just didn't need a pie fight, whereas Dawn of the Dead, I felt, is a comic book. It's, all these Crayola blood and guts and violence and shooting and cowboys and stuff and bikers. I thought it worked perfectly in Dawn of the Dead. Of course I like talking to Dimitri. I'm sorry I don't call you regularly Dimitri. The constant saying the guy's fucking name, after a while, it just makes you laugh out loud. Strangelove is a one-of-a-kind movie, outstanding movie. Sellers was incredible. The arm bit gets me every time, even after 60 years. Dude, me too. It's just, oh, I can walk. And the whole, like, sardonic song at the end actually starts from this movie. And what do I mean by that? Kubrick, in a lot of his movies, would end his movies with a sardonic song. And what do I mean by that? In this, you will meet again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. That's played here, obviously, in the sardonic tone of they just blew up the world. We're not meeting again anytime soon. So it's kind of sardonic. And then, of course, you look at Full Metal Jacket, they're singing the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse theme. And of course, you look at Clockwork Orange and they're singing in the rain by the end of the movie. That's a big thing. Probably with the short that I made, the biggest thing I took from Kubrick was the sardonic song at the end. Like, that's what the big thing with Down by the Bay, why I wanted that song at the end. I was like, this would be the perfect, like, Kubrick touch. We've just seen somebody go into the forest, get attacked by this person, and now will live on, as that, entity down by the water. Let's sing a happy song. Let's sing a song from preschool about it. So that was a big thing that I got from Kubrick. And this was the start of him doing the sardonic song at the end, which I just always thought was brilliant. And he did quite a few times so effectively. Just brilliant. Come on, man. Drake, the Redcoats are coming. Toe to toe with the Ruskies. Yeah. It's they don't make comedies like this anymore. Like, humor is so different now than it was then. It's just so evolved. Did you know that the movie was originally supposed to end with them? Yes, I did know that. That's true. I thought I was the only person in authority to make a decision like that. That's right, sir. You are the only person to do that. The precious bodily fluids. Yeah, Peter Sellers is not given true credit for this body of work. Most people remember only Pink Panther and What's New Pussycat. Yeah, which is a shame because not only is he great here, I think he's even better in Lolita. I think he should have won for this or Lolita. I really do believe that. I wholeheartedly believe that. Kubrick was going to make this. That's true. I was going to say that. He was. And then as he went on with it, he was like, wouldn't it be better if it was a black comedy? And there's even, some things that would go on to be in stuff like Clockwork and The Shining, like sexual innuendos that people don't even really notice. Watch the very opening of this movie. Watch the first 5 minutes of the aerial shots of these planes. It's all fucking sexual innuendos of this movie. That's what it is. And Kubrick confirmed it. Like, because somebody was like, what the fuck? Like, this is too blatant to not be. And he was like, yeah, it is. It's a sex joke. That's exactly. So absolutely crazy, Barry Lyndon killing, Paths of Glory, Strangelove, all Criterions. Okay, very cool. I'm hoping they do a 4K of Barry Lyndon at some point. That's the one that needs it the most. The pie fight wouldn't have been good. I agree. Well, he went a bit funny. Funny. Exactly. The scene where the pilot is riding on a bomb is such an iconic scene. Yes, Slim Pickens, and I've heard that Peter Sellers would have played the Slim Pickens part had Peter Sellers not had a bad back. So that was going to be Peter Sellers too. I think they did a good thing of cutting it off at 3. I think that was a really, really good idea to cut it off at 3. I think 4 would have been one too many. And Slim Pickens, everyone remembers from that role. And I think Slim Pickens himself said, I didn't know it was a comedy. He thought it was a legit, movie. He was like, what the hell? Like when he saw it at the premiere, he was so thrown. He was like, I didn't know this was a fucking comedy, so go show. Thursday are usually my days off, but I must do a graveyard shift because tomorrow I will be at the Dawn of the Dead Goblin Show. Ciao Grande. Hearst, have a good one, man. Hope you enjoy that show. That's going to be great. Sellers in being there too, so good. Okay, Grande Kubrick. Yeah. Ciao Hearst. I agree. Been there. Performance is great. Absolutely, man. Yeah, no doubt. There really is just amazing. So, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. That comes in at number 9. Moving on next, though, of course, is a movie that I have always been a pretty big fan of. And I thought, even from the first time I saw it, I was like, this is absolutely brilliant film from the year 1956. This was the movie, I think, that really put him on the map and really got people to notice him because he made a lot out of a small budget. He made a lot out of nothing. And this is a movie from 1956. This is The Killing. Crook Johnny Clay assembles a 5-man team to plan and execute a daring racetrack robbery. Yes, of course, starring the legendary Sterling Hayden, who was, of course, went on to be in Dr. Strangelove years after this. This was the movie, of course, to branch him away. And this is the movie where you see that this guy has shaken off the green beginnings of A Fear and Desire, of A Killer's Kiss. Here he makes this noir heist film, and it's just brilliantly done. The movie's like 80 minutes long, and it has you hooked from the word go all the way to the end. And this is the movie that really, really inspires Quentin Tarantino to go on all these years later in 1992 to make a little movie called Reservoir Dogs. If you watch the two movies, they are so similar. They're both about a heist. They both have different perspectives of the people involved in the heist, and we kind of jump from perspective to perspective to perspective. And I loved that about this. And I loved the noir style, because noirs, we were talking about it last week on the show with the Tales from the Crypt episodes, that noirs are hit or miss. When it's something like Seance from Tales from the Crypt, total hit, total gem, total home run. Sometimes noir can be boring. I mean, let's just face it, it can be a boring genre of film if it's not done right. The Killing is the opposite, though. It is so exciting. It is so entertaining. You want to see what happens next. You really see Stanley really start to use the camera in a unique way, a way that really wasn't being done in the 1950s. He has his camera kind of mounted from the left and, follows all the way through on like a dolly throughout this apartment. It's so amazing. You enter through here in the apartment. Oh, whoa, I just screwed up the freaking focus here. That's not good. Let's fix it. Oh, yeah, Grande in 3D. I think we fixed it. Yeah. They would enter from one side of the room and kind of walk all the way across, where the camera stays with them and goes behind the wall, through a bathroom, bam, and you're into the back room. I was mind blown. I was like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. Like, I loved that shot. And he does use it a few times. And he would even go on to use it in movies like The Shining. Like, if you watch The Shining in the scene where Jack Nicholson enters the gold room, he uses that same camera gimmick, and he learned it here. He perfects it here and would go on to use this same gimmick all the way, friggin' 34 years down the road when he's doing The Shining. I was mind blown by some of the energetic camera work in this movie, because that's what a noir needs. Yeah, if it's going to be a slow story, bam, give me an energetic, camera, and that's what he does. And I really like some of the supporting cast in this, and I want to get some of their names right here. Of course, you do have Sterling Hayden as the lead. He's fantastic. To me, the standout in this movie, and he would go on to work with him, of course, the following year, is Tim Carey. Not Jim Carrey, not to be confused with Jim Carrey. But we have Tim Carey in this, and he's the guy that's going to shoot the horse to kind of get this whole thing into the motion, because the whole idea is they want to rob this racetrack, and they have 5 key players, and each one of them has their key thing they have to do in order for the heist to work. Like, one has to cause a distraction, one has to shoot one of the horses, one has to go in there and actually get the money in this kind of mask and shotgun. You have all these players that have their roles. Tim Carey is the guy that has to shoot the horse, and just some of the dialogue between he and the guy at the gate is just fantastic. As he's trying to get the guy, anything to get the guy to go away. The tension there was so good. You could have cut it with a knife. And I loved Tim Carey. I thought he was just so good in this, as this kind of small side character that almost stole the entire movie from me. And it's funny, a movie like this, again, noir, energetic camera work. It's only 80 minutes long. It's a really, really quick watch. And I do believe you can watch this free. It's on Tubi. You can watch this on Tubi. So there you go. It showed that Kubrick could do a lot with nothing. And I think that this was arguably the most important film he made, in and of the fact that it put him on the map. It's not on the level of the next movie I have on the list, which is the movie that I think was his first true masterpiece. But I think this one, from an entertainment standpoint, from an importance standpoint, from the standpoint of where he was in his career leading up to this, and how weak Killer's Kiss and Fear and Desire are in comparison to this, I think this thing just shines. I really, no pun intended, shines. I really like The Killing. I think The Killing is a great noir heist film. Everyone should see it. It's just so good. The characters are good. Dialogue is good. Camera movements, like I said, very energetic, especially for the time period that it came out in. And I think the ending, I won't ruin it because it seems like a few of you in the chat that I peeked haven't seen it. The ending is one of the most brilliant endings of any of his movies. It's just so poetic. And Sterling Hayden's performance and that ending scene is just amazing. I highly recommend people see The Killing. It's arguably his most underrated work. It's not the most underrated. I'd say it's the second most underrated, but it's definitely there for sure. Number 9, Full Metal Jacket, and 8, Eyes Wide Shut. 10 was Lolita. I just drew up a list from the stream right now, Grande. I'll keep saying them as you go down your list. Okay, so Lolita for 10, Full Metal Jacket, Eyes Wide Shut at number 8. Very cool, very cool. And like I said, you guys can play along too if you want to give me your lists. If you put this higher than Strangelove, I need to put it in my watch list. Never seen it. Man, I think you would love it. I really do. I know I'm pretty sure you're a big Quentin Tarantino fan like I am. And this is a movie that really does inspire Reservoir Dogs. It would be a great double feature with Reservoir Dogs. They're just very fun heist movies. This one, you do see the heist from every perspective. I guess it's kind of similar to Jackie Brown in that way, where Jackie Brown, we see the handoff in every perspective. Here, it's a heist in every perspective. So it's kind of a mesh of those two movies, but in a really good way. Camera shot in The Killing is definitely a very Hitchcock moment. Yes, that's Hitchcock probably around this time was the only other guy doing camera work like this. But he was just incredible. I was just like mind blown by some of the innovative shots that he was able to do. And I'm just like, wow, like on a shoestring budget, he was able to make something so freaking good. And I think that's why he got the shot to do Paths of Glory, Spartacus, and then, of course, the rest is history, as they say. The Shining, he used a Steadicam invented by Garrett Brown, which was also used in Raging Bull, and another one, I can't remember the name. I'll list if I remember in the chat. Steadicam is a moving camera device. Exactly. In this, I would assume it was on a pulley. That's the only way I would think that they would be able to work it is if they had it on some kind of like pulley contraption. And the camera is a little bit shaky, but it's incredibly done. I'm like, God damn it. Look at the Gold Room scene. He does that there too. So I don't know. I nerded out for that. I thought that was great. You guys talking to one another. I think Kubrick, he tried to get all of the prints of Fear and Desire destroyed. That is true. He was so embarrassed and ashamed of his first picture that he did try to get Fear and Desire destroyed. So that is a shame. Reservoir Dogs, man, I love Reservoir Dogs, but that's totally fine. No, nothing to be sorry about. Spartacus is definitely a Bible story, kind of like movies like Lawrence of Arabia. Sure, Tarantino's hit or miss for me, so is Lynch and Goddard. Oh, wow, okay, I see. I like all those guys, but that's fair enough. That's totally fair. The Killing, really super underrated. I hope people give that one a watch because that one is truly not talked about enough. It's not as talked about as this next movie, which is just a step better. And like I said, I had my original list before I did my show prep. I did have The Killing over this, but upon rewatch, you just can't. It's just this next movie is so brilliant, is so great, and I do think it was his first masterpiece. This is, of course, from the following year, 1957. This is Paths of Glory. After a failed attack on a German position, a general orders 3 soldiers, chosen at random, court-martialed for cowardice, and their commanding officer must defend them. Yes, Paths of Glory, starring the late, great Kirk Douglas, of course, who gives a great, outstanding performance in this movie. And this was a great and considered, if not the best, anti-war film ever made. And I have a hard time disagreeing with that. It's brilliant movie. Again, very, very quick film. I believe it's not even an hour and a half. It's hour and 28 minutes. This is another really quick watch for you if you have not seen it. It's another really good one, and it's another one. This one's not on Tubi, so I don't know where you can watch this one if you don't own it. But, of course, this one stars Kirk Douglas as this, war general, and we open up in the trenches, and we have these very interesting shots in the trenches as Kubrick kind of takes us on a tour. And then again, predating The Hedge Maze, predating movies like 1917, which totally rips off a lot of the camera work used in this movie. And even Saving Private Ryan, which Spielberg admitted that he saw Paths of Glory and was like, I have to try to make my own type of movie like this where we're using the camera like that. A lot of the camera work in this was very much ripped off too. And this, again, you're looking at 1957. This guy was doing things that are trying to be replicated in 2019, 2020 and on. It's wild. The trench shots are just incredible. And we tell the story of these people that are supposed to kind of charge a hill, and they don't do it because obviously one of their commanders was drunk and stupid and shell-shocked, and he threw a grenade too early when he wasn't supposed to, giving away their position. And of course, one general disagrees with Kirk Douglas and says that we'll sentence 100 men to death. And of course, they argue and stuff until it gets down to 3. There are 3 men that have to die. One of them is Joe Turkel, who would go on to be the bartender in The Shining. The other one is Tim Carey from The Killing, which, funny enough, he apparently was so traumatized working on this film that he pretended to kidnap himself in real life. Tim Curry pretended he was kidnapped and fucking left the set the last few weeks of production, and they had no choice but to fire him. But he's in the majority of the film. The only time you don't see Tim Carey is when it comes to the execution. They shoot him from behind because he had run away, kidnapped himself. Craziness. But it's great to see him back here. He's great in the movie. Kirk Douglas is outstanding, and we get a lot of interesting conversations about what war does to people, right? We have this interesting interview with, well, how are you, soldier? I'm good, sir. And you can see the guy's not good. He's been affected by this. He's traumatized. You could tell the guy is clearly shell-shocked, and this general just doesn't get it. Put yourself together, soldier. Put yourself together. You have a job to do for your country. And he gets up in the guy's face like, you son of a bitch. And Kirk Douglas is the other side of that. Like, listen, these guys are human. We have to handle this with kid gloves. They shouldn't have charged that hill. They all would have died. And you know that. That was all a mistake from a general. And no, they were cowards. And you have that whole argument of one side saying these men were cowards for not running up there and being killed on purpose. And then the Kirk Douglas side, babyface side of, no, that's wrong. You're wrong. And then, of course, you have these evil people that say your men are good to absorb bullets while my other men can go on the other side and, get their stuff accomplished. They're basically, one side is saying the other should have sacrificed themselves, whereas Kirk Douglas is saying you're wrong. This is terrible. This is not what this should be. And we have those kind of clash in disbeliefs. And of course, at the center of this are these 3 men sentenced to execution. And of course, Joe Turkel, a great character actor. He's really good in the movie. Tim Carey is one of them. And they interview the 3 men and they're asked, what was your perspective of the day of? Just really good stuff, really intense, like court stuff between these 3 guys that are trying to plead their innocence. Listen, we had no choice. I didn't get any. How many meters did you get from the fence? Not many meters, sir. I love that. I love that line, how Joe Turkel delivered it. Tim Carey, the other guy's kind of bitching and crying and, oh my God, tomorrow that bug over there, that'll have more life than me and my wife and kid. What are they going to do without me? This is terrible. I'm going to be executed. And fucking Tim Carey, without missing a beat, squashes the bug and just says, well, now you got the edge on him. Like, I loved that. I was like, man, what a sad scene. This guy's like, literally like, I'm never going to see my wife and kids again. And then bam, kind of Kubrick humor, boom, like, now you got the edge on him. At least you outlived the bug by a day. Like, I thought that was funny. I thought that was a well-placed kind of quip until we kind of culminate to the finale where now granted, this is one I will spoil. I originally thought, there's some way Kirk Douglas is going to get them out of this. This is going to, Hollywood movie. This has got to be a one where they get off. They didn't do anything wrong. Like, maybe cooler heads will prevail. And they don't. These 3 men do get executed before your very eyes. And it's a really sad, heart-wrenching scene. And then Kirk Douglas is kind of walking away. And one of the generals thinks that Kirk Douglas wasn't really earnestly believing in what he had to say. Kirk Douglas kind of tells him off. You can go to hell before I apologize to you or you speak to me like that ever again. I mean, just really great, passionate performance from Kirk. And we get this amazing finale where he's walking by, sees all these soldiers that the following day are going to have to go into war and battle. And he's watching them kind of through this door. And this woman starts to sing. She's like a German captive. And she sings this beautiful German song that kind of takes them to another place for a few minutes. And that's really, I think, one of the most beautiful scenes in the entire movie. And fun fact, Kubrick would go on to marry that woman in the scene. He would marry her name. She'd end up becoming Kristen Kubrick. The German woman singing on the stage, that ends up being his wife. And she sings this beautiful song. And at first they're heckling her and then they kind of just take it in because that's what the war is. I mean, you get escapism, you take it. You take advantage of the escapism because it can be very horrific. And of course, we see the horrific sides of war here. Really liked it. Really, really liked this movie. I think it is his first true masterpiece. Like, this is the one that put him on the map. And like from here on out, they're just only masterpieces. Like, I don't think anything less of these rest of these movies from being a masterpiece. So, I mean, it is what it is. So let's see what you guys have to say in the comments. Curious to see if anyone has seen, let's see what we got here. 7 is The Killing. Okay, so we had them in close spots. Trench Shots. Yep, copied by 1917. Yes, exactly. I love 1917 as well. I thought 1917 was brilliant. That was one of my favorite movies of that year it was released. I thought it was just a brilliant movie. I saw it in the theater with my mom, actually, and we both really liked it. The end where the general is at a nightclub is such a great scene. It really is. I think that's the best scene in the whole movie, because the entire movie has been this argument. And then, of course, he can go in there and be like, soldier, like ruin their night, basically. And he decides not to. He bites his tongue. He looks, and they're enjoying themselves great. Like, tomorrow has enough worries for itself. Enjoy today. I like that. And Kirk Douglas says that all with expression. He says it all with a smirk. He doesn't have to go in there and ruin their night. He's going to let them enjoy the beautiful singing of this woman on the stage. I just thought that was really nice. I thought that was a nice kind of heartfelt message. Trench Shot in 1917 are lots of CGI and better technology with pads of glory. They actually built trenches. Kubrick was no compromiser. Of course, no. Stanley Kubrick would never have used CGI in a film. The generals don't even fight on the front line. That's right. One of the classic war movies that is so great is the very original All Quiet on the Western Front. Oh, my dad loves that movie. That's one of my dad's favorite movies. Joe Turkel was funny as the beatnik cabbie in Burt Al Gordon's Tormented in 1960. Joe Turkel's great. I love Joe Turkel. I think there's a scene with one of the prisoners where I think he's looking at an ant. It's a cockroach, but yes, that's right. He has more freedom than me. And crush, now you got the edge on him. Saw Pads of Glory in high school. Such a different prospect on war. If you think of the war movies of those times, totally, yeah, it really was. And I think that's a big reason why it's remembered. Like, the Kirk Douglas performance is electric. The direction is great. Some of the cinematography in it is just amazing. It's not really a battle war film. It's all about perspectives of the war. And here are these three guys that unjustly died at the hands of it, at the hands of arguments, and I thought that it was really powerfully done. People talk. We watched All Quiet in history class in high school. Very cool. German singer is Kubrick's wife. That's right. His third wife, yep, and married until his death. Yes, that's true. Maybe I'd say The Killing is his first masterpiece. I think Killing is close. Killing put him on the map. This is the movie that's really the fucking master. Like, I think this is like, there's no hole. There's no hole here. I mean, it's just a perfect fucking film. It really is. So that is Pads of Glory. Now moving on, of course, into our number 6 selection, which was a movie that I had to grow on. I really came around to this movie because when I first saw it, I thought, honestly, the word that comes to mind, and I never really say this, I hate this word, was boring. I thought this movie was boring when I first saw it. I was very unimpressed, and upon several rewatches, I could confirm this is one of the best period pieces ever made, probably my favorite. And I think that it's the one Kubrick movie that I think is the one you have to rewatch because it has arguably the least rewatchability to it. Because of its length, its daunting length, of course, its subject matter, it's a period piece, whatever. This is from the year 1975. This is Barry Lyndon. An Irish rogue wins the heart of a rich widow and assumes her dead husband's aristocratic position in 18th century England. Yes, Barry Lyndon. I can't lie to you. Like I said, when I first saw it, I was really unimpressed. I was like, in between The Shining and A Clockwork Orange, you made this? Like, I was so let down by it. And I don't know why necessarily. Maybe it was the length. Maybe it was the subject matter. Maybe just I was too young for this type of movie. I wasn't wanting to watch this at all. And I will say, it is still, you feel the length of it. I watched this Tuesday night. I felt every minute of those 3 hours. You feel it. This is not a film that you're going to be able to, perk up and watch. I mean, you've got to be awake and ready to watch a movie if you're going to go on and tackle Barry Lyndon. With that being said, though, it's an incredible movie. And I dare say it's his most beautiful movie. And while I have it at number 6, I do think from a stylish standpoint, a scope, that there has been no better Kubrick movie than this movie right here. The colors just pop. This thing desperately needs a 4K. This was the debut of it on Blu-ray high def. This movie, there's no movie out there that would more benefit from a 4K than this movie. There's no fucking question about it that this movie would look insane in 4K Ultra HD. Of course, we do follow Ryan O'Neal, who I know Stanley Kubrick at the time did not want to work with. That was this one creative uncontrol that he had with the picture. If he wanted to get the budget that he needed, he had to pick somebody in like the top 10 most desired actors. And Ryan O'Neal, for some reason at the time, was number 2 on that list. He had done, I forget if Paper Moon was before or after this, but he was he was hot at this time. Ryan O'Neal was like an up and coming, really big megastar in the making, although he didn't really get there. But he was a good up and comer at this time. Picked him begrudgingly, and I know a lot of people have a problem with Ryan O'Neal in the film. No, Ryan O'Neal is great in this movie. I'm sorry. Like, I get it that Kubrick didn't want to work with him. I get it. A lot of people don't think he's very charismatic. I don't think that's the point of this character. I don't think that's the point of the role. I don't think that's the point of the movie. I think the reason it is so slow, I think the reason that we have a lot of slow zoom ins and the reason we have a lot of slow zoom outs is to also accentuate the period. This is the 18th century. This was an old time. This movie literally looks like a painting come to life in some of its still cinematography. It is just breathtaking. It's one of the biggest eye treats you'll ever get. It's beautiful to look at. It really, truly is a gorgeous film. The music in the movie is just incredible. And the do 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 do, just amazing. I mean, the score in this, the music, just all of it is fantastic. As we follow Ryan O'Neal's character who plays Redmond Barry, of course, when the movie starts until he becomes Barry Lyndon. It's a great rags to riches story of this guy who we start off, he's trying to win over the heart of his cousin. Yeah, he wants to fuck his cousin, and even gets into a life or death duel with a guy over trying to fuck his own cousin, which is very weird. But I guess 17th century, you know, or 18th century, 1700s, I should say. You know, he shoots the guy dead and he has to leave town. His mother, you know, pack your things, go. You have to get out of here. He gets out of there. You know, then he just, all these things. He gets into gambling. He gets into smuggling until it kind of ultimately crescendos into he wants to marry rich. He wants to marry rich like some of his family members had done. He meets Marissa Berenson's character, who was like a model at the time. She hadn't done all that much acting. I mean, she's done some, but this was one of her first works. She's just beautiful in the movie. He kind of wins her over and marries in, and then of course starts becoming this, you know, guy that shows his true colors. He cheats on her. He treats his stepson like shit. He beats him, talks down to him. And we see this man who went from nothing, got everything, and kind of is destroyed. It's a rags to riches story, yes, but it's also the rise and fall of Barry Lyndon. That's really what this movie is. The rise, humble beginnings. I will kill somebody over this woman. I believe in it that much. To the, you know, final kind of woman that he gets with is Marissa Berenson. And okay, I'm just going to marry her because she's rich. It's a goddamn, you know, what have you? Like segue, like this is my segue. This is my shortcut to get all these riches. You know, I'll do this. Very interesting. And man, I got to be honest, some of the heartfelt moments of this movie, when he does have an actual kid with Melissa Berenson. Of course, she has the kid before him, and then with him, they have the biological kid. Just amazing. I mean, he loves this child. He gets the kid a horse for his birthday. And of course, the mother, don't ever ride the horse without your father right next to you. And of course, when that line is said, you just know what's going to happen. You dread what's going to happen. And of course, the kid falls off the horse and it ultimately causes the kid to die. But there's a fantastic scene with the child, and Marissa Berenson, as the kid is on his deathbed. They're holding hands and he's telling his father how much he loved him. And Ryan O'Neal, I mean, I got emotional watching it. I was like, wow, this is truly fantastic acting. I know a lot of people don't like Ryan O'Neal. And I'll be honest, other than this, I'm not a giant fan of him either. I do like Paper Moon, but it is what it is. This, though, his performance here, I know a lot of people knock it. I'm not one of them. I think it's a really good performance. And I like that. I felt that emotion. I felt that, you know, raw genuine emotion. And of course, when it comes down to the ultimate duel between he and the stepson, and of course, the stepson shoots his gun by accident, and the whole tension there, like, can I get another gun? This is an accident. Sure, you can have another gun, sir, but first, Mr. Linden has his shot. And I love that, like, oh shit moment of that. Just incredible. It's just really, I think, a great tale of how someone rises and falls. I think that's the beauty of Barry Lyndon. And through all of that, the costume design, the music, the cinematography, the slow zooms and ins and outs, the fucking fact that if you still shot this movie, it looks like a painting. There's a great scene where Barry Lyndon's fallen into alcohol after the death of his son. He's kind of slogged over in the chair. It looks like a painting. Some of the duel scenes looks like a painting. It just, wow, it's breathtaking. It's the most breathtaking movie he made from a visual standpoint, and it's the most beautiful Kubrick film. It really is. It's not the best. I will say the only reason, why isn't it number 6 if it's so great? This one, it does have pacing problems. That's the only knock I have. It's a masterpiece with pacing problems. It's not a movie I can rewatch like, the ones ahead of it. Like, even like I would watch The Killing and Strangelove just because of the runtime being less than half of this movie. 3 hours and 5 minutes. You feel it, man. It's just, that's the only knock I have on the movie. I mean, there's an intermission. That's how long this thing is. So I don't know. I love the movie though. Never really hated it. Just really took me a long time to get it and appreciate it. And man, whenever they do drop the 4K, you bet your bottom dollar I'll be buying that 4K, pre-ordering that son of a bitch. It's just gorgeous. Let's go back to the chat though. Let's see what you all have to say. I think Barry Lyndon. Yes, the music theme of Barry Lyndon is such a very iconic theme. I agree with that. You also put Paths of Glory at number 6. Okay, so we're right around the same margin here. So much better than Heaven's Gate. Absolutely. They would wait hours to get the correct weather for the. Yes, this was. I forgot to mention that. This was the one movie where Kubrick finally just started going nuts with the takes. Like, I believe that there's a shot in the carriage of Marissa Berenson that they shot 57 times. And one of the actors said, Stanley, like, got upset and was like, Stanley, what the fuck? And he was like, what? What do you want? He's like, you want a break? And the guy was like, yes, we've done this 57 times. We're in a fucking carriage. What are you trying to accomplish? And of course, Kubrick said, okay, well, we'll call for a break. Called for a break. They go back. He puts him back in the carriage. And he made him apparently do it another 50 times, but crossed out number 57 and put number 1. So he was like, oh, I didn't make you do it 100 plus times. You just did it 50, So that was Kubrick kind of playing a joke on him. And the funniest thing about that is apparently the cinematographer, John Alcott, said to the actor at the premiere, he goes, do you know what number take he used of the 100 that we did? He's like, what? He's like, which number? He goes, number 3. He goes, like, what? He made me do that 100 fucking more times than I had to. He's like, yeah, he pretty much did, So absolutely, I love that. I always love that behind the scenes story of that fucking John Alcott being like, yeah, like he took take 3. Like, I just love that. Oh my God, the actor was pissed after 57 when he could have been done at number 3. Like, and he made it do it 100 fucking times, But I love that. That's a great Kubrick story. I always thought that was really, really funny. It's like, imagine that guy's fucking face. He told him, like, yeah, 100 times we made you fucking do this, and pretty much for nothing. Maybe Heaven's Gate. Okay, you guys talk about Heaven's Gate. Barry Lyndon's use of zoom shots, I think, echoes paintings. Yes, exactly. That's how I see it too. Like, Jess Franco. As much as I love Jess, and I know probably nobody else in here is going to... You're mentioning Jess Franco with Stanley Kubrick? Yeah, I am. I love Jess Franco. I would fucking go to war for Jess Franco, man. That's a fucking... With the Joey Diaz, all you need is 3 motherfuckers, and you can take over a country. Jess Franco's one of those motherfuckers, man. I love Jess. And I would assume if Jess Franco watched this, he would come all over himself. Jess Franco would love Barry Lyndon because no one used zooms, slow, forward more than fucking Jess Franco. There's nobody that used it more than him, man. And like, I would love, if Jess was still alive, I would love to know Jess Franco's thoughts on Barry Lyndon. That's probably something nobody ever asked him, but my dumbass would. I think the reason why the film is slow is because I think those aristocrats and other people lived life a lot slower than we do. And I think, I do think he's reflecting that. I do think it's purposely slow at times. And it's not something I got until rewatches. But again, I have not seen this one as much as the others. It is it is a chore, like it's a beautiful film, but man, you do feel that. That's the only reason it's number 6. It really, visually, you can't put it any lower to me, but I can't from a pacing standpoint. It really is just slow. It is. It is. There's no line about it. Ryan O'Neal was hot due to Loves. That's right. Okay, thank you. I couldn't think of the fucking movie. When was Paper Moon? Wasn't that around this time too, though? Am I crazy? Because Bad News Bears with his daughter, I think Tatum O'Neal, was 76, 77. And that, I know Paper Moon was before that. At least I think Paper Moon was before that. So I want to say 74 was Paper Moon, but I don't know. Barry Lyndon, most underrated Kubrick movie? Yes, for me. I have a hard time. I mean, I have one more underrated, but I do think it's got to be in the conversation for the most underrated. It's this, The Killing, and one more movie I think that are the most underrated Kubrick movies, and this one is no exception. It really is. It's a tremendous film. At his cousin, like Rudy Giuliani did. Oh no, Grande. Barry loves though he does love the biological son, and there's very nice scenes with the two of them. And I was surprised that kid didn't go on to do much. I thought that kid actor was great. I thought he was just tremendous in the film. I really thought it was sad. And his mother. Yes, he does love his mother. It's funny. He starts and ends with his mother. Like the mother says, oh, go off, go make yourself. And by the end of it, when Barry Lyndon is, spoiler alert, on one leg, he has to get one of his legs amputated after the duel, in which he concedes, basically. I think because he wants to die, he ends up, of course, only just losing his leg, and that ends up being worse. He was better off dead. His mom picks him up. They go in the carriage together. So he started with his mom, ends up with his mom, and poorly gambling. I thought that was kind of funny how it all came full circle, because Barry gets the disillusions with true love and his cousin Nora Brady and becomes jaded, basically. Costumes and sets are so beautiful. Totally. That's a big reason to watch this movie. I know my Aunt Nancy, she loves this movie. I think she saw it in the theater, which I'm super jealous. And of course, it's something I didn't mention. A lot of this movie was shot with camera lenses from NASA. So basically what he wanted to do was he didn't want to use any extended lighting. He wanted the entire movie to do natural lighting. So there's a lot of day shots because obviously there's no better natural lighting than the sun it fucking self. And he has these night scenes where they're all lit by candle. And the only way to capture these shots and make them not look grainy or distorted or fuzzy was to use these special camera lenses that he took from NASA. He bought the camera lenses from NASA to shoot some of the candlelight scenes. That's how much Stanley Kubrick cared. And I know he was devastated at the time that this movie was a flop. It didn't make a lot of money. It was a huge Oscar darling, nominated for everything. But it didn't make a lot of money, and he was very upset. And it was the biggest reason why he decided, my next picture, I want to keep my artistic style, but I want to make something more commercial. And that's obviously what he ended up doing, from this movie to The Shining, that 5-year period. He was very depressed and upset. And then, of course, said, fuck it, I'll make a horror film my own way. And that's really a cool rebellion and answer to a lot of the people that couldn't get into this movie. I love the way the characters talk, totally. I think Kubrick studied paintings from a lot of that period, totally. Ridley Scott imagery is also painterly, and oh my god, totally. Alien is the biggest example of that. Like that, when you see the jockey on the fucking, that's like, it looks like a painting. It's just beautiful. It really is. I could rewatch Lyndon. It's one of those underrated films, like the 70s, like Coppola's The Conversation. Sure, I do think it has the weakest rewatch of all of these. I really do, and it is because of the pacing. It just is. I think that's why, again, it finds itself at number 6. I can pretty much guarantee I'll never watch it. 3 hours, no way I'm ready to tap. Oh yeah, no. If you are not, I would agree with you. I don't. There's some people that would never be able to get through this movie. There's no doubt. It really is no doubt about it. People talk about The Conversation, Kubrick, and okay, you beat me to it. I didn't see the comment though, so to be fair, most filmmakers use fast film lights back in the 70s for low light situations. Paper Moon was with his daughter around the same time. I thought so. The movie Lolita has a bit of incest. We will get there, /Fred. We will get there. Many decades later, Fincher used red digital cameras for the same natural light reasons. Those lenses, they had to be careful with the cameras so they didn't go out of focus. That's right. Lyndon wasn't successful in the U.S. and U.K., but successful in Europe, which, it's funny. But I really like Barry Lyndon. I think it's a really good movie, and I definitely think it's one that is one of his more underrated. And it's one that I would say has grown on me the most. Like, if I was making this list several years ago, Barry Lyndon probably would have came in at number 9, number 10, but it's moved up to number 6. And who knows, maybe the next time I watch it, it'll move up top 5. I don't know. Sometimes Kubrick movies have a way of growing on you. And speaking of that, yeah, this next one kind of grew on me and to find its way into the top 5 Kubrick movies. So we are into the top 5 now. Of course, this was his, I guess, second to last swan song, if you will. Penultimate film, of course, from the year 1987, a movie where he was deciding to go back to the war theme, a movie where he wanted once again to kind of do something a little bit different, and he did it successfully. This is, of course, from the year 1987. This is Full Metal Jacket. Brief plot synopsis. I actually wrote down a plot synopsis because the one was so bad on the website. A pragmatic U.S. Marine observes the dehumanizing effects the Vietnam War has on fellow recruits, all the way from their gratuitous boot camp training to their bloody street fighting in Hue. Yes, Full Metal Jacket. A tale of two films. Everyone, when you ask someone about this movie, they generally are always going to say the same thing. The first half is perfect. The second half is okay. It falls off. It's good. It's not as good as the first half. That's like most people's reviews of Full Metal Jacket that I have read in my life, have heard in person. I will say this, of all of Kubrick's films, for whatever reason, when I was in high school, whatever, this was always his most beloved movie, like from people that I knew from school and stuff. This was like so over from where, I don't know why, but my town, this was like one of the most over movies. Everyone loved Full Metal Jacket. I love it too. I think this is a great movie. I love the Hello Vietnam in the beginning as they're kind of shaving their heads. And of course, it's a movie of two halves. They have the first part, which is Vincent D'Onofrio, of course, in the best career performance he gives, of course, as his slow descent into madness, as this guy who has entered the war and the boot camp and basically is just doing everything wrong. Of course, Arlie Ermy is the infamous character. You will not laugh. You will not cry. I will teach you. I will cut off your head and shit down your neck. And, how tall are you, Private? 5'9". I didn't know they stacked shit that high. And just some of the improvisation of Arlie Ermy, who was a real drill sergeant. That's why he was casted. It wasn't like he was an actor and they were just like, oh, he did a really good job on Broadway, bring Arlie Ermy in. Arlie Ermy was a real drill sergeant. So, he plays the role that he was born to play in the movie and improvised a ton, whereas Kubrick only ever let one other actor improvise, and that was Peter Sellers and of course, Lolita and Strangelove. The only other time he ever let an actor improvise was this movie, Full Metal Jacket. And Arlie Ermy just is incredible in the opening of this, just building this really tense atmosphere of like, oh my God, I would not want to be there type of situation. And we follow this, story through the eyes of Matthew Modine's character, who people are going to hate me for this. As far as Kubrick leads, I think Matthew Modine's amongst the worst. I don't really like him as an actor. And I don't really like his character. I know everyone loves Joker. People say Private Joker is one of the best Kubrick characters. I don't see it. I think you could have got a better actor. I don't know. I know I'm going to get shit for that, but I don't really like Matthew Modine. It's just, sorry, Matthew. Sorry, but I just don't really like Matthew Modine. But I do really like the movie. Of course, I think I do agree with the majority. The first half is fucking better. It's just such an interesting, thing to tackle. Like, what if somebody went fucking crazy in the training session? Because these things are so intense. We get up at 500. We go running around the world. We go on these obstacle courses. And what if we had somebody that was really big? And, of course, Stanley Kubrick went to Vincent D'Onofrio and said, hey, I want you to be big as Lon Chaney. Like, eat your fat ass off. I want you to be really wide for this picture. And of course, he comes in and is just up for the challenge. And Vincent D'Onofrio starts off as this guy who's smiling and, sir, yes, sir, and wipe that stupid fucking grin off your face or I'll make you choke yourself. And, sir, I'm sorry, sir, I can't help it, sir. I love that. I really like that. I don't know. I didn't mind that personally. I think while you're introduced to this character and he's this kind of smiling, goofy guy, you see him slowly lose his fucking mind out there. And that's, I think, the best part of this movie is you watch this guy just lose himself in the war. And I like how, he's talking to Matthew Modine. You guys all hate me, don't you? And Matthew Modine's like, no, we don't hate you at all, Leonard. We just want you to do well. That's all, Leonard. We don't want to be punished. And the two of them kind of talking about it, and the point where he fucks something up, and they all decide to kind of hold him down in the bed, and they beat him with the bars of soap, and he's crying, and oh my God, that it is horrific. I think maybe people think I'm crazy. The first half of this is a horror film. It's a horror film in a fucking boot camp. It's Child's Play 3 before Child's Play 3. It's just really disturbing, the first half of this. As we see this guy slowly descend, we see the guy start, getting really good at shooting. And then it gets to the point of graduation day where he has this crazy kind of meltdown where he's sitting, tap right shoulder, left shoulder, putting the fucking gun on both sides. And R. Lee Ermey comes in. Did mommy and daddy not show you enough attention when you were younger? You put that down, you sleazy son. And fucking boom, just shoots R. Lee Ermey. He goes down, eats the deck, and then blows his brains out. And you're just like, holy fucking balls. That is a crazy, like, wow. Like, where do we go from here? And I know a lot of people from there don't like that it becomes your standard war picture. Like, the next scene, it's, these boots are made for walking, and they're fucking, now they're in the whole shit of it. And it becomes your standard war picture from there. You do have some colorful characters along the way. You have Animal Mother, the Adam Baldwin character that everyone really loves. I knew a guy in high school that was his favorite character ever. Like, his Twitter was Animal Mother. He wore Animal Mother shirts. Like, he believed he was Animal Mother. It was the coolest thing ever. I was always like, dude, gotta love him. Good old Matt. I hope Matt's doing well. I haven't seen or heard from him in a long time. But hopefully he's being Animal Mother somewhere. That character's fantastic. You do have his buddy that, was in the whole boot camp with him that he meets up with again. And we do have some interesting commentary. I know a lot of people have said this movie doesn't have a lot to say. I highly disagree with that. You do have the whole scene where Matthew Modine has the peace sign on his helmet, and it also says "Born to Kill" in that black kind of text. And, the guy says, well, why do you have a peace sign and it's "Born to Kill"? Is that some kind of a sick joke? And the guy says to him, like, no, sir. And, well, you tell me something, private joker, or I'm going to fucking, make you paid for, son of a bitch. And he says something like, I wanted to say something about the duality of man. And I think that's a big thing with this. It is talking about, that is the whole point of the picture. And they do spell it out for you. That's what Kubrick is trying to say. It's all about the duality of man. This stuff isn't right, what we're doing. He's still anti-war as he was in Paths of Glory. But I do think here we see a different side. We see different sides of the war. We see someone who lost their mind before he even got into the thick of things because these guys are treated like animals instead of humans. And then, of course, when we get into the thick of it, we have some very intense sequences. And I always remember, to me, when people say, oh, the second half doesn't work, I do agree with Kubrick. What we're saying here is what I was going to get to, the sniper sequence. That is one of the best sequences in any Kubrick film. It is incredibly done. As one guy goes out, he gets shot. We got to get him. We can't just leave him out there. We're going to call and wait for the tank. You stay here. Stand your ground. Fuck you, pussies. I'm going after him. And Animal Mother just running there. You motherfucker! Shooting. How that whole thing was shot is just so, you want to run with him. Like, let's fucking go. Like, he leads you into that unbelievably brave. And I love that. I love how that was shot. And you can see some behind the scenes footage in the making of this and how they did that. It's incredibly done from a filmmaking standpoint, and how excited you get for his character to go try to save his friends that are pretty much dead meat. And then, of course, the whole big unveil where the sniper is a woman. And there's this whole conversation in the film, you've killed women and kids, like saying that. And then the guy's like, I don't think anything of it. They're fucking monsters too. And there you see that, yeah, a woman was doing this. Anybody can be brought into become a monster from this, whether you're the fat, nice guy, whether you're a fucking 100-pound woman with a sniper on your arm. Anybody could be turned into a monster from this setting. That, I do think, is what the duality of man and the point that Kubrick was trying to drive home here. And I think it's perfectly said. As we see, we can't leave her here. And I'm in command now. And I say we let her here and let her rot. I'm not saying we can't. I'm just saying we can't leave her here. I just love the fucking conversation between those two, because after she is sniped and killed his best friend, their captain, he still has mercy for her. You can see Private Joker has not been lost in this whole world. And you do have the monologue, I'm in a world of shit. But that is what it is. And of course, the sardonic song, in a world of shit, in a world of female snipers killing your best friends, in a world of war where people lose their fucking minds. What are we singing at the end of the fucking picture? Mickey-Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse. Kubrick's the man. And I know people will bash this movie because a lot at the time, this was a movie that suffered the most for coming out at the time it did. Because for people like me, I saw it, thought it was great when I first seen it. When it came out in 1987, Platoon had come out. I think Hamburger Hill had come out. These movies that had come out, a lot of people felt Kubrick was too late to the party. Thus, a big, big reason why Aryan Papers never happens. I really believe the poor critical reaction by some people to this movie is another reason we never got Aryan Papers, because I feel like he was like, if I do this, it's just going to be, it's not as good as Schindler's List. And I don't think he wanted to deal with that repercussion again after this, because a lot of people said, it's no Platoon, it's no Hamburger Hill. You know what? You're right. I think it's better. I said it. I like Platoon a lot, but this is, I think, a better movie because of what it had to say. And I don't know. I love Full Metal Jacket. I think Full Metal Jacket's a fucking masterpiece. I really do. Let's go back to comments. I think we were here. The Shining at number 5 for you. Very cool choice. R.I.P. R. Lee Ermey. Johnny Perna, welcome, man. Hope all's well with you. R.I.P. to R. Lee. Absolutely. A lot of people gone, sadly, in a lot of these movies. I mean, when we get to my number 2, almost the entire cast of that movie's gone. The boot camp part, the prostitute, and the sniper parts are well done. The rest seem to be a parking lot with dead pacing, which just stops the film dead. See, that's funny. I think a big reason why I put this over Barry Lyndon is the pacing. I think the pacing in this is just so improved. Like, I do think visually Barry Lyndon's better, but I think from a pacing and storytelling standpoint, and I would even say acting, that you got to give it to Full Metal. I do. I think the acting is much superior in this movie. Maybe he's playing with narrative in Jacket. I think so. I don't think as much as the movie I'll talk about next when it comes to playing with the structural narrative. Full Metal Jacket was great. Saw it in its first run, a wild film. I'm jealous. I don't think I've ever, other than The Shining, seen a Kubrick movie in the theater. I almost saw Lolita, but I remember I was with my ex at that time, and like we had a horrible fight the night that we were going to go see that. So we didn't end up going. I wanted to see Lolita in the theater so bad. We ended up going, but I did see The Shining. That's the one Kubrick film I have seen in the cinema. Full Metal Jacket is one of the earliest movies for actor Matthew Modine, who, I don't know. Am I alone in that? Am I crazy for not really liking Matthew Modine? I don't know. I just never. And I know that he didn't like Kubrick. He did not, like, he was like, got upset with him at a point, and like literally the two of them got in a car. And he was like, I don't know what the fuck you want from me. You're so difficult. And Stanley was like, Matthew, stop over fucking thinking this. Like I know that, Matthew Modine put him over post-death, but it didn't seem like Matthew Modine liked working with Stanley that much. So that is what it is. I know around this 80s, The Shining, Shelley, Kubrick, that was probably the worst time to work with him. He wasn't supposed to be that part, Ermey, but Ermey managed to convince Kubrick to be in it, and then managed to convince him that he could do his own lines. Incredible. Ernest Lee Ermey played a very similar character. Oh God, let's not talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. It's a fucking horrible movie. Grande, I've met Tom Cruise and Matthew Modine. Cruise was really nice, stayed for autographs and photos. I don't think Modine liked me that much. Well, his fucking loss, and that's shocking that Tom Cruise was nicer to you than Matthew Modine. That's weird. Are you John Wayne? Or is it just me? Lee performance is iconic. He was also Gregory House's dad. Hell yeah, that's right. That is right, man. Good point there. Yeah, I love R. Lee Ermey. The Toy Story. It made his career. It made him a star. Like I would say he had a bigger career than Matthew Modine. I don't think there's an argument there. D'Onofrio, of course, with I think it was CSI or Law and Order or one of those fucking shows. I don't really like any of that or watch any of that, but he had a recurring role in that. And I like him in other stuff. I wish D'Onofrio, that's one guy I wish had got more. I know he actually tried to direct a horror film at one point called Don't Go in the Woods. No relation to the 80s movie. But man, if you want to watch one of the most poorly made fucking films, That's Don't Go in the Woods from Vincent D'Onofrio. That's a bad one. I liked Ermi in the TCM remake. Okay. Amazing. Yes, totally. Painted Black at the end. Of course, Boots Are Made for Walking. Hello, Vietnam in the beginning. A kick-ass soundtrack. Very, arguably his best soundtrack. I would say it's this or the number one movie on my list. Modine was famous initially for Birdie and Vision Quest. What is your major malfunction, numb nuts? You could tell Ermi loved doing that role. Yeah, because he was right at home, really. There's way better Vietnam films, Grande, like Platoon. See, I like this. I would take this over Platoon. I really would. I think that this right here, this is a big reason why Aryan Papers was never made. The comment like this, he was so pissed that a lot of people considered the movies that came out like a year prior better, and then they beat Stanley to the punch. And I think he died being pissed off about that. But the sniper parts are very well done. I agree. I wanted to show the duality of man, the Jungian thing. Okay, you better get your head all together or I'll take a giant shit on it. The sniper parts were shot in the cold weather in England, and Kubrick put machines. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally. Painted Black by the Rolling Stones. Platoon, I think, is better than Full Metal Jacket. Totally fine. Totally fine. On the topic of Vietnam War was squeezed a lot into the 80s and early 1990s. Of course, yeah. And hey, popular to do. I just think, they had a lot of good movies at the time, and I think he just came out too late in the conversation, and that's why, it wasn't as positively received. Good use of slow-mo and Full Metal Jacket compared to hacks like Snyder. Sure, I would agree with that. But moving on into his most important film. I have it at number 4. I don't think it's his best film. I know there's a lot of people, like most lists, and I looked up a lot of lists. Most lists had this at number 1. I can't argue it. I do think it's a great movie as well, and I do think it's his most important film, because it really, in a lot of ways, not only defines the sci-fi genre, but it was him taking you into space. It was truly a revolutionary picture for the time, and every science fiction movie that dealt with space travel or things like that do owe a huge gratitude and thank you to this movie from the year 1968. I'm talking about 2001. A Space Odyssey. After uncovering a mysterious artifact buried beneath the lunar surface, a spacecraft is sent to Jupiter to find its origins. A spacecraft manned by 2 men and the supercomputer HAL 9000. Yes, 2001. Now, again, I think of all of his works, this is the most polarizing. I've heard people say this is one of the best movies ever made. I've heard people say it's the biggest piece of shit of all time. I know, and the big story is, in its big premiere, they had 241 walkouts, and apparently Stanley Kubrick stood at the door and counted them because he knew people were going to walk out of it. And of course, Rock Hudson, who was a big actor around that time, of course, I think McMillan and Wife was McMillan and Wife Rock Hudson? I fucking don't remember. But like, Rock Hudson was an awesome actor, and Rock Hudson had the famous sentence at the premiere of the movie. He said, "Could somebody tell me what the fuck that was about?" And it was very controversial, and a lot to this day. My dad saw I was watching this for show prep. He went, "Oh, it's that fucking movie." He went, "I like any other movie that guy did." He says 2001 sucks. He's like, "I hate 2001." He cut a promo on it and left the room. I was like, "Damn." I get why people don't like it, and the reason for that. And my grandmother, huge film fanatic, may she rest in peace. She hated 2001. A lot of people don't like 2001. I see in the comments I cheated. Alpha saying don't like 2001. Never been big on it, I guess. Didn't say dislike. So I get it. I think there's a big reason for that, though. This was his most revolutionary film, and he wanted to change narrative structure. And I think that was the most daring part about it. And I think that is a big reason why a lot of people do not like the film. People find it dull. People find it too slow. The pacing is just at a snail's pace. I've heard people say this is slower than a Barry Lyndon. Understandable. I don't know about that. I would say this is better pacing than Barry Lyndon, but that's fine. I think this movie is brilliant, though, with all of the fucking questions that it presents to you. I really love this movie. And of course, it starts with the Dawn of Man sequence where, we're introduced to all these kind of apes. In the same year as Planet of the Apes, funny enough, Planet of the Apes comes out in 1968, another great movie, another groundbreaking movie. Let's be honest, they're still making Planet of the Apes movies that are in theaters right now you can go and see. So crazy enough. You have the Dawn of Man thing where the apes learn how to use a bone as a weapon, and that kind of like that contrast. That next shot, and we see a spaceship, and we see how that bone has now become this spaceship. A flawless transition from Kubrick. All the usage of the music, the classical music like Strauss. You can't think of the do 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 da da bum 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 bum. There's two things you can't hear that music without thinking of 2001 or the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Woo! That it's just synonymous with these two things. You can't unhear those two things and not think about one or the other. So I love that. The Strauss music, just fun, really great usage of music. As we are given this movie that is just so different from a narrative structural standpoint. It really is so different from any other movie that he ever did. And thus why I do think it's his most controversial. Now, what people always put over is the technical. The technology in the movie, the usage of the scene where he's talking with his daughter, which, fun fact, was played by Kubrick's own daughter. That was like FaceTime being invented. He was doing that in 1968, before iPhones, iPads, and all these things were a thing. He's using the technology of the supercomputer HAL. And of course, the Canadian actor Douglas Rain. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Just great performance from Douglas Rain. It's incredible. It's truly incredible. Some of the stuff how ahead of his time he was with it. The colors, the sets, the fact that, you'd have people in the zero gravity walk up and down. From a technical standpoint, it's just gorgeous. And then, of course, you have the whole mystery of the monolith, and it shows up, it seems, every time we get into human evolution. Very interesting and mysterious. You're wondering, what the hell is the meaning of this? And I know there's 101 different interpretations and theories and stuff as to what it is. I don't like to think all that much on that. I think I just like to enjoy it and let it be a mystery. And I think you can kind of just enjoy it in that way. The best part of the film, without a doubt, is the stuff with HAL 9000 and Douglas. Like I said, Douglas Rain, Keir Dullea, really like Keir Dullea in the film as they're going on this mission. And then, of course, HAL 9000 kind of goes a little crazy and becomes this ultimate villain. Then we could all remember the red retina eye of HAL 9000. Just incredible. As this thing kind of turns, and it's up to Keir Dullea to kind of get back onto the ship in this very tension-filled sequence where he fights his way back onto the ship and decides he's going to shut down HAL 9000. And there's this fantastic sequence where he's turning the key, shutting down HAL, and HAL, which with every turn is digressing slowly and slowly and slowly until it gets to, "Hi, I'm HAL 9000. Do you want to hear a song that I was taught today?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure, Hal, sing it." And he sings the Daisy song. Daisy, Daisy. I thought that was one of the best scenes in any Kubrick film. I really did, because that is such a wonderful commentary on not only just evolution, but all of us, but humanity as a race. We all start out as not just these primitive apes, the Dawn of the Man sequence. We don't just all start out as, whatever. We start off as these young, innocent creatures. And we start off as these, and I see Alpha was in the house. We were talking Day of the Dead. We were talking about Bub being an infant. And then Richard Liberty has that great line, "We're all tricked into being, good little boys and girls like mommy and daddy trick us into being." That's Hal. Hal is the first memory it has is singing this innocent song, Daisy, Daisy. And as he's disprogramming it, I always thought that was the most brilliant scene in the entire movie. I was like, wow, like this is absolutely astonishing. I was like, wow, because it's such a great commentary on we all start off as these innocent things, and then the world and the people around us and the technology around us shapes us into the monsters that we may become. In a way, it's Kubrick's coldest film. In a way, it's his most mysterious movie. And then, of course, the whole trippy sequence with him going and all the pretty much the light show at the end, which I would love to see this in the cinema. I think if there's any Kubrick movie you'd want to see in a cinema, it's this one. It would just be astounding to see this in the movies. Amazing. Mysterious Star Child. What does it all mean? I don't know. But I just think this is a great movie. I get it. I know a lot of people, I'm pretty sure what I briefly scanned in the comments don't seem to like it. That's totally fine. I get it, but I do think this is his most important film. I really do. And it finds itself at number 4. So go figure. 2001, A Space Odyssey. Let me go back to comments here and see what you all have to say. Number 4, Clockwork Orange. My uncle was a Vietnam vet and says the Full Metal Jacket is the most realistic portrayal of war. Well, there you go. Kubrick thought all other sci-fi films that came before 2001 were not technically well done. Well, he's not wrong. I mean, he fucking took you into space more so than anyone had ever done at that point. To the point where they thought he faked the moon landing. People to this day believe that Stanley Kubrick films the moon landing and that it's all a hoax. You imagine being that good at your fucking job that people in the world perceive that you faked Man Walk on the Moon just because of how good from a technical this movie is. No one will ever accomplish something like that again. Never been big on 2001. Totally fair. You're not alone. My dad and grandmother hated the movie. I think what makes 2001 such a very iconic movie is that it feels like a history movie because it begins with the sloths in the prehistoric era beating up the bones. Exactly. And it goes all the way through the evolution of the future. You know, the future of course, where this movie in the future, 2001 was the future, obviously. And then, of course, they made that sequel, 2010, which is for the birds, in my opinion. But exactly, I agree with that. It's the whole evolution and technology and how we are changed and morphed from little innocent little boys and girls and morphed into these horrible things. I like all of that stuff, but I could totally see how it's a slog for people. Totally. I see that side of the coin. The Stargate scene were great for the hippies. Yes, this was a big drug movie when it came out. Like, a lot of people would take acid and go into the theaters and watch this movie. Now, granted, I've never touched a drug in my life, so I don't know what being on acid is like. But I always remember what Steven Spielberg said of this movie, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. He goes, they were doing drugs, calling it a big drug movie. He goes, when I went to see 2001, that movie was the drug. That movie made me forget about everything for 2.5 fucking hours, and I was immersed in Stanley Kubrick's world in outer space. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. That's the brilliance of this movie. This movie is the drug. You don't need a drug to see this. The movie does that for you. 2001 used music for space scenes instead of endless sound effects like most movies. And yes, against the classical music. Like, that was so smart to the point where I hear that music now and I think of fucking space. So it's just, he did something right. I think it's a very poetic film. I do too. I think it's deep. I really think it's deep. Okay, I'm going to be buried. Dude, no way. Not on my I would never bury you. I do not care for 2001. I have the same opinion of Grandma and Grande Sr. Well, you're not alone. Yeah, like I said, you are not alone, man. And think of it. You're at a big premiere. Opening night. Stanley Kubrick coming off Strangelove, which is probably one of his most beloved movies. Like, I don't know anyone that doesn't love Dr. Strangelove. But fucking, this was the follow-up, and 241 people walked out. And that's all the ones he counted. It could have been more. It could have been over 250. You have big actors at the time saying, what the hell was that shit? Publicly, you know? And I think that this movie, in a lot of ways, it's so important because, again, it changed narrative structure. Movies, there aren't any movies like this. I think a lot of people expect Alien, or they expect Star Wars, or they expect what came after it, what looks like it, but is not really the movie. And I think that's another big thing that really deters people away from this film. Like, I will be honest, I saw Star Wars long before I saw this movie. I thought it was going to be something sci-fi. Okay. I thought it was going to get this big magical story. You don't get that here. You get a cold fucking look at man, a cold look at evolution and technology, and all these colorful creative sequences. I mean, it's really something else. The character HAL 9000 was of course it was, totally. And Douglas Rain, I think, gives one of the best voice performances, man. He's so good. May I ask a question, Dave? And it was nice playing chess with you, Dave. I just he's great in it, man. Douglas Rain's so good. I really like the parts of Hal stuff, but God, that movie is slow. Yeah, it is. It is. There's no doubt. Like, I love Barry Lyndon in this. They're slow movies. I can't defend. That's why they're numbers 4 and 6. They're not numbers 1 through 3. They're just not. But in even a slow movie, I could appreciate the fucking goal and the visuals and the technical. So much so with Kubrick behind the camera. Have you ever seen the 1984 movie Quest for Fire? That movie was basically the 2001 opening. That's totally, absolutely. I think you can be an atheist and like this film, and a person that believes in God, and the film still makes sense on both sides. Kubrick wanted people to come up with their own conclusions at how to interpret the film. And I know his biggest quote for this movie was that if someone figures out how to really interpret what I meant, I failed as a filmmaker. And that's a big reason why I never really, like, there are people, oh, a conspiracy, this is what the monolith means, blah, blah, blah. No, don't dive into those. Just let it be. To me, that's the whole point of it. Yeah, it is a mystery. Yeah, it does seem to show up at the times when man seems to, revolutionize. But I don't know what the meaning of it is. I have no idea, and I don't want to know. That's the whole fun of it, is the ambiguity and the fact that, yeah, I'm not supposed to know. I don't want to think about it too much because it could hurt it. I think you have to park your logic at the door at the end of the film when Bauman leaves Discovery with the Jupiter and beyond. You see, yeah, people try to interpret that with the Star Child and New Life. And again, like, I don't know. I just don't think about it that far. 2001 had early use of Ligeti in film, which he later used a lot in The Shining, along with Penderecki, haunting music. Okay. The sequel, 2010, The Year We Make, definitely tried to understand of why Hal had turned against the. Yeah, I don't like that movie. I never liked the sequel. Grande originally, Alex North did a score for 2001, who did the music for Spartacus, but Kubrick chucked it. Good thing he did. The music couldn't have been a better choice. I can see and appreciate how it was spectacle at the time, but for me, the story or lack thereof is really what holds the movie back for me. It was the Avatar of its time. Yeah, sure. I mean, granted, I would watch this 20 times before I'd watch Avatar again. I hate Avatar, but totally get what you mean. Like, visually, wow, but it didn't do. It was Fern Gully, That's the whole thing with fucking Avatar. It was Fern Gully. The scene where Dave kind of sees himself as an aging man is a very listen. The whole finale of this, I think, is very trippy. And I don't try to think about it, like I said, but like, again, the stuff when he's deprogramming it and you see how something that has become so evil and sinister has, that humble beginning. I was like, that's Stanley. Like, that's brilliant, man. I just thought that was so smart. Let's see. The aliens at the end are made of energy. That's why you can't see them. If you read the novel, he tried to make a bunch of the aliens, but wasn't satisfied in the end. Well, here's the thing. I'm going to actually blow your mind. This was actually not based on a novel. This was based on the short story, The Sentinel, and then it was adapted as a novel after the fact. So 2001 was not a novel before this movie. It was post-adapted. So the short story was all they have. So he and the writer, I want to say it was, what the hell was his damn name? Arthur C. Clarke. I was going to say Arthur Miller. I'm like, I know that's not right. It's Arthur something. Arthur C. Clarke. They kind of worked together to come up with the whole mystery of it. So if there's any Kubrick movie with the most, like, of his type of storytelling, it's this one. And then there goes to show you, a lot of people don't like the story. So there you go. So maybe he was better off adapting novels like he did with pretty much every other work. Daisy was used as it was an early Bell Labs speech synth demo song. Fever Dreamland Theater says, like many classics, 2001 has also been parodied so many times. Of course, yeah. The scene where the guy is running on the ship and away, the camera does it like a hamster wheel. Oh, man, yeah. And it's, you see guys like Wes Craven years later doing stuff with the Room and Tina, turning it upside down and the whole walking scene. Like, it's a brilliant film. I think it sounds like Slasher Fred was a really big fan. You keep saying iconic. So I'm glad that you're a big fan of it too. Don't tell Alexa. Yeah, very true. Fever Dreamland Theater. The initial scene is probably the most mocked or homage in cartoon series or other. Sure. Yeah. Listen, when something's popular and when something's trying to be groundbreaking, it's going to get parodied and made fun of. And that's the fun of it. I think it's fun to laugh along with stuff like that. And this is totally, why not rip off 2001? And movies borrowed from it and made seriously great movies. So I'm forever thankful for the movies that it inspired to be made. The centrifuge scene on the Discovery is revolving set with the camera bolted to the set. I think the camera fell off the set at least once. That's where I've read that too. Alexa, I'm afraid. Cooper lover. My mind is going. I can feel it. My mind is going. There's no question about it. That's great. Stargate scene was done by Douglas Trumbull with colored lights going through a slit and the film shooting being sped up, which was incredibly. I always loved that sequence. It's a light show. It's just so like, oh man, now we get the light show part of this movie. I don't know. I like that. The scene where Dave and his crew try to talk in secret. Oh, dude. Thank you for mentioning that. That might be one of the best scenes in the movie too, is they're just trying to, rotate the pod, Hal. And they're like, okay, you can't hear us. And you see this, and you're like, oh no, like they're in such deep trouble, man. You're right. It's just iconic scene after iconic scene. It really is. The shots before the alien room at the end were things like, I think, paint being dropped in slow motion or close-ups of microscopic cell. Okay. You're selling me on giving 2001 another watch. Hey man, you sold me on giving You're Always Vanilla. There's Always Vanilla another shot, and I actually liked it a lot more upon a rewatch. So you never know. But yeah, listen, this is definitely not a movie that everyone's going to love. And I get that. I totally get that. Like, I saw lists where it was number 1. I saw lists where it was number 10. Like, I saw all sorts of lists this week. But I do think it's just too important to bury. That's just my kind of look at it. We can't all like the same thing. Exactly. Yeah. And that's the fun of this. Listen, the movie, I'm going to have a movie in the top 3 that people are going to be like, never. Like, I'm sure people are not going to like it. Sort of makes me think of Lynch's Eraserhead. He won't explain the film. Funny enough, what was Stanley Kubrick's favorite movie? David Lynch's Eraserhead. Funny enough, yes. David Lynch was greeted with a telephone call from Stanley Kubrick and said, sir, I want to tell you, you've made my favorite picture. And David Lynch was like, I'm sorry? Like, really? And he was like, yeah. He said, I love Eraserhead. It's my favorite film. He says, I have people over my house. I want to watch Eraserhead with them and see what they do. So, yeah, funny fact that Stanley Kubrick's favorite movie ever was Eraserhead. So, really cool stuff. Avatar is too much eye candy. I hate Avatar. Avatar sucks to me. I never liked Avatar. Have you ever seen the original foreign movie, Solaris? That movie is like 2001, which I know that Tarkovsky was very fucking critical of 2001. He didn't feel that Kubrick did a good job. He didn't like 2001 at all. So is what it is. I know those two get compared a lot, Tarkovsky and Kubrick. I don't really see a correlation. I think they're very different styles. They're both great filmmakers, but I don't think Tarkovsky and Kubrick are at all similar. I think the only thing that's similar is they were both successful. Like, that's where I would say that's where the similarities stop. I know it was a short story, First Grande, Arthur C. Clarke. Yeah, okay, there you go. I'm not wild about Solaris, but I like other Tarkovsky films. Sure, that rotating set was done before Fred Astaire was dancing on the ceiling before 2001. Okay. The Alexa just made a noise. My Alexa that I own. I'm serious. Okay. There you go. You're being haunted a little bit now. We're talking too much shit about artificial intelligence here. Mystery Science Theater had a great 2001 ref scene where Gypsy is shown like the how close-ups as the cast is whispering as the view pans back and forth. I think 2001 gets split reactions, more so than any other, for sure. Here for Juan Soto chats. Pat, what's going on, buddy? The music that plays when you ever see the pillars is such a haunting theme. Yes, it is. It's great. Kubrick showed Eraserhead on the set of The Shining. That's right. Eraserhead is brilliant. Skinamarink kind of reminds. Oh, well, I don't like Skinamarink, but yes, Eraserhead is iconic. Let's move on, though. Let's move into the top 3. Let's move into, finally, on a horror podcast, the horror movie that Kubrick went on to do. Of course, in my opinion, aside from Dawn of the Dead and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I do believe behind those 2 movies, this is the next best horror movie that there has ever been. It would be number 3 or 4 on my list. Last House on the Left and Nightmare on Elm Street would be right up there as well. Suspiria would be right there. Deep Red would be right there. But this movie, I do think, has to get the edge over those. And it's from the year 1980, of course, starring the legendary Jack Nicholson. And, of course, the adaptation from the much controversial Stephen King novel and, of course, the opinion of him from this movie. This is The Shining. Yes, The Shining. A family heads to an isolated hotel for the winter where a sinister presence influences the father into violence, while his psychic son sees horrific forebodings from both past and future. Yes, The Shining. I, as a horror fan, consider myself so fortunate and lucky that one of, if not the greatest filmmaker of all time, made a horror film. Like, it is a treat for any horror fan ever that Stanley went to horror. He never had to go to horror. He never, I don't think, ever said horror. He probably didn't have to do this movie. But, of course, with Barry Lyndon not doing well in the theaters, he wanted a commercial hit. Carrie had come out in 1976, made a whole bunch of money, made a whole bunch of noise. Brian De Palma's classic film, Carrie, based on a Stephen King novel. He started reading novels, Kubrick. He was trying to discover what was the next project I'm going to tackle until he came across this book, The Shining, in which he fell in love with, got into, and thus wanted to make a horror picture. It's so cool to me that Stanley Kubrick made a horror movie. Like, I wish to God, selfishly, Quentin Tarantino would make a straight-up horror movie. Now, I know Death Proof is as close as we'll ever get to that, especially more the first half as opposed to the second half where he became, more of a like White Lightning type of film with car racing and stuff, or car chasing, I guess I should say, instead of racing. But this is just, I think, one of the all-time great horror movies that there's ever been. And I think there's numerous reasons for that. But the number one reason, above all else, is Stanley. Stanley Kubrick's direction is the star of this movie. The way he takes you through the hotel, the overhead shots of the maze, the scenes of the tracking shots from the kid on the tricycle going from carpet to hardwood and confronting the two twins. Come play with us, Stanny, forever and ever and ever. Amazing. The stuff with the attention to detail and the conspiracies. Jack Nicholson's tie is literally made and designed like the fucking hedge maze outside. The weird, performances, Scatman Crothers, I thought that me and my grandma, we found out there was more that had to shine to us. Just, oh man, great stuff. Jack Nicholson's over the top, just incredible performance that I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't like the film. He's crazy from the beginning. I understand that. That's a fair critique of it. But what I think about his performance in this, and I another great Kubrick story, if anyone's into Kubrick anecdotes, apparently Stanley Kubrick had Steven Spielberg over for dinner after the release of this movie. And he said, Steven, what did you think of my movie? Like, tell me, whatever you felt about it. And Spielberg said, oh, I liked this. And Kubrick read right through it. He said, you didn't like my movie. And he was like, well, I wouldn't say that. He goes, I could tell you're lying. He said, what didn't you like? And he said, well, I thought Jack went over the top. And he said, okay, right off the top of your head, name me your top 5 favorite actors. And, Steve Spielberg started listing great actors, Spencer Tracy, Clark Gable and Cary Grant. And he said, stop it right there. Where in the hell was James Cagney? He goes, that's what makes Jack Nicholson's performance in The Shining a truly great performance. Sometimes you've got to go over the top. Sometimes you've got to chew the scenery, and you might just steal the fucking whole show. And that's what Jack Nicholson does here. You cannot go to any horror convention without seeing this artwork. You can't go. There's not one horror convention in the world that you can go to and avoid this artwork, avoid this classic shot of Jack Nicholson hitting the door with the axe, peeking through. Here's Johnny as the ode to Johnny Carson. It's one of horror's greatest visuals and shots and moments is Jack Nicholson in this movie, in that particular scene. And not just that scene, but the entire thing. When you hear me typing in here, you're distracting me. And it takes me time to get back where the fuck I was. And just the absolute insanity that he kind of delves into. Little slow tonight, Lloyd. I can't do a good Nicholson laugh, but he laughs into the camera and he's asking the guy, what'll it be? And of course, Joe Turkel, who all the way from Paths of Glory is the bartender in this, which I was like, oh shit, Joe Turkel. Very cool. As we follow this movie that's a very kind of interesting, weird ghost tale of this former alcoholic who's trying to write his novel in this overlook hotel, and just the incredible camera sequences that we go throughout this entire thing. It's just so incredible. I'm just amazed by everything about this movie. This is one of his most rewatchable. I do think it's one of the great horror movies ever made. And it's one that, like, every time I watch it, I see different stuff in it. I know they've even made documentaries about the stuff in this movie. Like, it's crazy about all the conspiracy theories people have and stuff like that. And that's cool. I definitely, though, again, it's another one where I don't overthink it. Like people have asked me, what do I interpret it as? I do have actually a small interpretation. I do think it's like a revolving door of reincarnation, because of course you have the interview scene with Barry Nelson, who says to him, hey, I don't want to freak you out, but 10 years ago, we had this guy, Charles Grady, who, he kind of murdered up his fucking family, cut him up with an axe, and it was quite gruesome. You hear that story, and then later on in the Gold Room, where again, we get that shot from The Killing as we go all the way across, he knocks into this guy, and his name's Grady too, but it's not Charles Grady, it's Delbert Grady. And I'm sorry, sir, I think you're mistaken. And of course, that scene where they're in that red bathroom, it's one of the most mind-fucky scenes ever. It looks like they're in a Target bathroom as these two fucking guys just going back and forth talking about, I'm not Charles Grady, I'm not that guy, and you've always been the caretaker, sir. I should know because I've always been here. Just amazing, that scene between those two guys. And I know that took like over 100 takes too before they got it right. That was Stanley being Stanley, I guess. But I always saw this movie too as, okay, here's Charles Grady is the name of the beginning. In this scene, it's Delbert. And of course, the final shot with the 1921 4th of July ball, when we see Jack Nicholson, he's there, right in the front of the picture, like this. I always thought that it's a revolving reincarnation door where, boom, Jack Nicholson, yeah, he has always been the caretaker here. This hotel is a revolving door of evil where all of these evil entities, whether it be Grady, whether it be Torrance, rotate year in, year out, year in, year out. Maybe it's decades apart. I don't know. But that's how I kind of always interpreted the, ending of the movie, if you will. But again, just the stuff from a filmmaking standpoint, to see this done in a horror picture is, as a horror movie fan's dream come true. Because let's be honest, as a genre, horror is not highly looked upon. It's not looked at as high art. A lot of it, look at it, just sleaze. A lot of it, the slasher movies, they're boobs, blood, and mayhem. There's nothing wrong with that. They're popcorn movies. It's a genre that has gotten so much unnecessary shit. And you could always take this movie and shove it in the face of a snob that doesn't like horror and say, yeah, you don't think this is art? You don't think this could be done well? You don't think from a stylistic, artistic standpoint that we could tell good stories and be effectively creepy? Eat your words. And that's what The Shining is. And just so many, Slasher Fred was talking about iconic scenes, and I see, yeah, you're mentioning them. I was going to list off some of them, so I might as well. The one that immediately comes to mind is the shot in the bathroom with the old woman. It starts off, it's this good-looking woman. Jack's feeling it. He's kind of like Ric Flair his way over there, and it's this green bathroom. He kind of starts kissing her, and then she's this decayed old woman laughing at him with no teeth. Horrifying. You have that great intense shot and sequence with Scatman Crothers and Danny Lloyd, and they're talking to one another about what The Shining is. You're scared of room 237, ain't you? No, I ain't. I don't like what goes on in that room. There's nothing going on in that room. It's just that great scene between those two. The scene in the bar, the scene with him. He's typing all this stuff, and then finally his wife takes a look. What has he been writing over the past months? And it's the same sentence over and over. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And the fact that somebody had to go, probably his secretary, probably took ton of time, hours upon days of typing that out in different fonts and different formats and different paragraphing, and all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And when she's seen her face of like, oh my God, he's not even been writing this book this whole time. He's been writing the same fucking sentence over and over. And Nicholson's performing, hey, how you doing? Do you like it? How do you like it? And Wendy, darling, light of my life, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to bash your brains in. I'm going to bash him right the fuck in. And fucking, she swings at him, and oh my God, the whole finale where he's banging on the door and asking for another chance to get him, and I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your housey down, hitting the door, and her screaming and trying to give the Kubrick scream and, over the top facial expression. That's why I love horror movies. And that's why I love movies in general, is movies like this. Does it make the most sense in the world? Can there be 100 conspiracy theories as to, did it mean this? Did it mean that? Again, don't get too far lost into conspiracy theories. I do have a theory as to what the ending meant, that I already explained it. But again, that's not the point. That's not the point of this movie. The hedge maze, the overhead shots, how the hell did he do this? throughout the movie in the picture. That ominous boom, 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 as that wide shot of the water into the fucking mountains. I mean, he takes you from your living room couch into the fucking Appalachian Mountains, basically. It's just magical. And I know Stephen King hates it. I know a lot of loyalists of him hate it. Hate it all you want. This is one of the best movies ever fucking made. And it's number 3. Like, that's what's crazy about this movie. This is number 3. It's just fucking wild. It really is wild. I mean, if The Shining is number and it's funny, it's my number 3 favorite horror movie of all time. It's my number 3 favorite Kubrick movie. So there you go. Let's go. Wow, I don't know where we were. Fuck, I don't know where we were. This one I knew was going to get the most comments because obviously of all of these, this is probably the one people, horror fans, have seen the most, obviously. I think we were here. Kubrick, I believe it was at my cousin's. She has Alexa anyway. She started to respond to an ad for Alexa. Can't remember exactly what was said when it got to, hey, Alexa, my cousin's Alexa started. Okay. Monolith. Oh, okay. Maybe I went too far. 4th is Clockwork Orange. Taking the 5th. Grande, have you seen the documentary on The Shining called Room 237? See, I hated that documentary. I made fun of that documentary. Like that documentary is funny for about 30 minutes, and then it just becomes ridiculous. Like, someone says that, like, oh, do you see that poster on the wall? It jumped out to me. It's a Minotaur. I'm like, what the fuck? Lady, like, I don't know what drugs you got your hands on, but you need therapy. Like, the lady that believes that fucking picture of the skier is a Minotaur, she's got to be in the number 1 dumbest percentile of people of all time. I don't like that documentary at all. I thought I would, but it's just dumbasses with their conspiracies. There's a couple of the theories that I'm like, very cool, that's interesting, but not to warrant, I think it's like a 2-hour documentary. No way, Jose. No way. King eventually came around. He said he appreciated the Kubrick version as different. Yes, because I know his defense was Kubrick's film was cold, my novel was warm. In my novel, the hotel burns down. In this fucking movie, Jack Torrance freezes to death, But that's Kubrick. Kubrick is cold. So, and I know that Stephen King submitted a screenplay that Kubrick rejected and he didn't like it. And, whatever, those two butted heads. There are a lot of false stories. Now, I know a lot of people say, Kubrick called Stephen King at 3 a.m. and asked him if he believed in God. That never happened. That's a fucking hoax. That is not a true story. Kubrick denied that. He said that was laughable. He said, I can't sleep. He said, but I would have better things to do. Call Stephen King. That's what he said. So I believe Stanley there. I don't believe anything that anyone else says about that. The Shining is a movie that definitely has a plot that is hard to understand. Is it a movie where an alcoholic father is trying to redeem himself, or is it a haunted house movie? And I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's a classic scene where he says, I'd sell my soul for a fucking drink. And that's when he starts seeing paranormal. There's nothing that Jack sees paranormal until he says that line. I'd sell my fucking soul for a drink. And also, too, another thing with, I think, backs up the whole revolving reincarnation. Notice how he knows the bartender's name. He knows, like, everyone in the gold room. He knows their names. What it'll be, Lloyd, That to me drives home the point. You've always been here if you know the people that work here's names, At least that's how I always saw it. 237 is bonkers, a lot of fun, pure nut jobs. Yeah, I agree with that. I assumed maybe King came around. He came around to it because I think he realized it's so good from a technical, and it's also, man, whether you like or dislike this movie, it is one of the biggies. And I know that when it came out, it was very mixed. And it came out right around the time, of course, of Friday the 13th. I can't think they came out weeks apart. They both came out in May of 1980. And Friday the 13th outgrossed it. And Kubrick was pissed. I mean, think about it. That was the popcorn teenager movie. The Shining was this deep psychological horror movie about this guy and his descent to madness and, slowly but surely losing his fucking mind in this overlook hotel with all work and no play. I think that probably made Kubrick flip. This fucking movie about a guy, a killer at the lake, a woman, avenging her son at a lake, that outgrossed my horror movie. He wasn't even the most successful horror movie that month. It was just crazy to think about looking years back now. As much as I love Friday the 13th, two different entities here. You're just not talking about the same fucking thing. As much as I like both films. Grande, Alien, Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and The Shining are my top favorite horror films. I can't say which one is better than the other. Dawn is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I say then it's this movie. But Elm Street's right there. Last House, Suspiria, Deep Red, they're all right there, man. There's so many great, shit. I think the original caretaker of the Overlook Hotel was named Charles. Okay. It's Charles Grady, and then by the end, it's Delbert Grady. So I always looked at it as these are two different people with the last name Grady that look exactly identical. And then same thing with you see Jack Nicholson, in the 1921, and here's Jack Nicholson that we've been watching is Jack Torrance the whole film. That's how I always saw it. But again, the movie up into interpretation, so maybe you're right. I don't know. He mentioned it on Letterman and Dick Habit. What do you think of the meeting Jack Torrance in the picture of the New Year's Ball of 1921? Brief opinion on the sequel, Dr. Sleep. So I did explain the 1921 thing. I'm assuming you heard all that. I do think it's a door of reincarnation, and that it is a reincarnation door for evil. Like evil just tracks to that place, and it's the same people with just different first names, but the same faces and last names. That's how I always saw it. Brief opinion on the sequel, Dr. Sleep. The direction is very good. I like Mike Flanagan. I like almost anything Mike Flanagan has done. I think he is very talented. I think he's got to get out of streaming land because that's where he seems to be stuck. Like everything he does is streaming, Haunting of Hill House, and start making theatrical films again. I liked Oculus. He somehow made Ouija prequel good. Like that's his talent. He's a talented guy. He shouldn't be fucking making straight to streaming stuff. He should be making movies that are big horror movies. With that being said, I didn't really care for the story. It's so hard to make a sequel to a perfect movie that is 39 years after the fact. I like Ewan McGregor. Always liked him, whether it be Trainspotting or as Obi-Wan fucking Kenobi. I think it's okay. I think the direction is good. The acting is good. The rest, I don't know. One-time watch for me. I have not gone back to revisit it. So that's my brief opinion on that. The Shining is my grower movie. I was a teen something when it came out. Before seeing The Shining, I was a hardcore slasher fan, but I grew older. I began to like it. Exactly. So yeah, you must have been on the umbrella. Friday the 13th comes out. I'm all in on Friday the 13th. That Shining movie is too long, a little too drawn out. Maybe, it wasn't a good popcorn date movie. It's not, it's a lot deeper film than that. And I think that at that time, you look at the following year was the year of the slasher where that was what was drawing. That's what was selling. The scene where it looks like Jack can see Wendy and Danny through the motel of the hedge maze is where he's almost like he's watching over them. Brilliant. Just brilliant. I love how that's all done. But you didn't say James Cagney. Yeah, exactly. I love James Cagney, man. Would highly recommend the documentary Room 237. Yeah, no, I can't stand that documentary. I'm not going to lie to you. The blood. Oh, my God. Yeah. And the fact that it took like 9 days to set that shot up. 9 days. Could you fucking imagine 9 fucking days to get a scene that there's no sound when it's just like literally something somebody sees. And I do know this though, it wasn't no like 200 takes. It was done in 3 takes. They took take 3 and that was it. So that was done in 3 takes. So again, though, 9 days to set up something that it took 3 takes and is in the film very briefly. Always will dislike The Shining. Oh man, are you a Hereta hater like me, or do you like that movie? See, that's like, I don't know. I people that put over that movie and then say The Shining is not good. I don't know. But I think Pat hates A24, so I don't think so. Spielberg thought Jack Nicholson's performance was Kabuki-like. I thought he was great in it, man. So okay, so you guys like that documentary, overacted. But that, again, I do think there's always a time and place for overacting, and I think he did it. We all remember it, whether you think it's over the top or not. It's memorable. That's the most important thing. Another iconic scene is when Jack is seduced by the sexy woman in the bathtub. Yes, I did touch on that. The book was one of King's best, and I think King came around because he got tired of talking about the film. Yeah, I do think that too. I think he got tired of fucking being like, I don't like it. And people be like, what? Which I get why, because it was so personal to him, and that it was his story of battling alcoholism and the demons he felt that he faced. I get why it's personal. And hey, if I was in his shoes, maybe I'd hate the movie too. But there's no fucking doubt that he adapted what was in that book. He took what was in that book and fucking made it just an iconic fucking movie. There's just I think that fucking movie is way better than the book. I'm sorry. The Shining TV miniseries, although more like the book, was pretty bad. Oh, it sucks. The Steven Weber fucking miniseries of it sucks. Mick Garris, oh my God. Fucking Stanley Kubrick. I'm sorry. James is in the here all the way from the UK. Just woke up. We'll have to watch this. This was one of the movies I bought on my horror bender. I loved it too. That's awesome. And fun fact, I know James is a UK guy. Stanley Kubrick lived in England from 1962 on all the way to the end of his life. And he rarely left England. So, because he hated flying, he thought flying was very unsafe. So yeah, you go, so straight, he was born in the Bronx and ended up in England for the rest of his life. So very cool. I think St. Albans might have been, I forget where in England, but the ending scene with the camera zooms in the 1920s. Oh, dude, yeah, it's just a perfect ending. It's the best, like, creepy, and that song, Midnight and the Stars and You, and that slow fade to black there is like the story's over here. I really like that. I would take Rebecca De Mornay over Shelley Duvall. Shelley Duvall is the only thing in the movie I don't like. I know people really shit on her, and I don't want to make this about this because I do believe Kubrick being hard on her drove her to fucking insanity. She is sadly not there anymore. Like, the lights are on. No one's home anymore for Shelley Duvall, which is sad. But her performance is not good in the movie, in my opinion. I know Jack Nicholson has defended her and said she gives the best performance in the movie. Buddy, no way. No way. I don't see any artwork of fucking Wendy Torrance at Arc Adventures. I see your fucking crazy ass shouting lines of fucking late night talk show host that is remembered forever. So, I'm sure he was probably trying to, be a good co-star, a good friend. I think Eraserhead is an art horror film. I don't think that at all. I know Eraserhead, always he says that no one's ever been able to interpret Eraserhead, and that's the beauty of it. I do think that movie is about the horrors of being a fucking single parent. So there's horror in that, I guess, but I don't think it's a horror film at all. I never saw it that way. Shining is an epic horror movie, absolutely. Scenery of the music in the 20s era, and The Shining is oddly creepy before the blood and skeletons, of course. Yeah, it's insane to me how this was his one and only horror movie, and how he mastered all of it. Like, all the tension, scares, it's all remembered. Like, it's just amazing. The scene where Jack is in the foot storage refrigerator. And he's, give me one more chance, Mr. Grady. Never understood the whole 100 takes thing. If it takes a director 100 takes to get him what he works, does that really make him a genius? It's good. It's a very good argument. I mean, it is. It's a good argument. And like I was saying with Barry Lyndon, I don't know if you were here in the chat for that, but he did over 100 takes for that one scene in the carriage. He used take 3. So he made the guy do it over 100 fucking times. After the guy complained to him, made them take a break. He didn't just say, okay, we're done with this scene, let's move on, I've got what I need. No, I made him do it another 50 fucking times. So he was pretty crazy. Kubrick told the 20s extras in the gold room not to nod their heads. Tricycle scene is incredible. Dude, of course. That's one of the most iconic, and how that's shot, that tracking shot. Carpet, hardwood, until the dead stop of seeing the twins. Just one of horror's best, like, most iconic things. Scene where the ball rolls towards Danny and they change the floor pattern. I love Kubrick, top 3 director for me, but his stuff is just brilliantly balanced as the line fine between genius and insanity. Sure, listen, hey, he may have gone too far with some things. And I do think the way he treated Shelley was too far. Like, to verbally abuse someone to the point where they lost their mind now is not okay. Now, I understand why he did it. There was a method to his insanity, madness, whatever you want to call it. He was trying to get a good performance out of her. It didn't work. She wasn't right for the role. I am, in the unpopular opinion, if I'm cast in this movie, it's Jack Nicholson and Karen Black. Karen Black, to me, was the only choice for the Wendy Torrance role. And of course, they had worked together 11 years earlier in 5 Easy Pieces in 1969. Great, counterculture movie of that era. Really, I love Karen Black. She should have been the Wendy Torrance character. I think they made a major fucking mistake in casting Shelley Duvall. But again, with that said, she tried, and I'm very sad as to what happened to her. That sucks. The film scared the shit out of me when I saw it, along with Alien Dawn of the Dead. See, that's so funny to me. Dawn of the Dead never scared me. I always thought Dawn of the Dead, that was the fun of it, was a party. But my dad always tells the story of going in to see Dawn of the Dead. They blow off the guy's head in the Tenet, And my dad ran out of the theater. My dad was like, I will not watch the rest of this movie. And funny enough, all these years later when I'm born and I said, Dad, my favorite movie is Dawn of the Dead. He was like, I ran out of that movie. So I always loved that story that he literally ran out of the movie 10 minutes in where they're invading the fucking apartments and the guy gets a shotgun blast and my dad ran out of the theater. So yeah, maybe you're not alone. If you ever watch the trailer to The Shining, it doesn't give you much of the movie away. Exactly. And that's, it was what he needed at the time. He needed a hit. He needed a movie that was, again, artistically sound, but to be a hit. Now, critically, it was mixed from audience goers and critics alike. But over the years, it's just been reevaluated, and it's just become one of the most iconic horror movies. And there's no denying that. Whether you like it or not, I don't think you can deny that. Okay, I'm just going to try to get through some of these to catch up because we have been going at this. Looks like you got yourself Jealousy. Shining is one of few King adaptations that is widely regarded as being better than King's book. It is. It totally is. I had to correct them, sir. Then I corrected them. Yes, it's so good. Wendy Carlos, thank you for mentioning that. I was going to mention Wendy Carlos when we got to Clockwork, but yes, Wendy Carlos is great. I mean, some of the best music you'll ever hear. The movie Misery is definitely Shining in reverse. Exactly, yeah, and I love both those movies. Both those movies are really well directed. Rob Reiner does a great job with that. It was the original Oppenheimer versus Barbie weekend. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess so. If you could, fuck. Someone made a parody trailer of The Shining as a romantic comedy. Oh, I love when people do that. All I know is the paraphrasing King once said in an interview, imagine having your dream car with no engine. And that's how it felt about The Shining. He's entitled to that. He wrote the fucking story, but to me, They used the music heard in the trailer for The Shining for the teaser trailer to the movie 2012. I didn't know that. Dr. Sleep did nothing for me. I remember very little about it. Okay. Rose character is great in Dr. Sleep. 9 Days makes me tired just thinking about it. Could you imagine? Yes, the BJ mask, the fucking bear BJ mask. Yeah, wow. We have a lot of comments. Grande, did you see the footage of Kubrick directing Duvall? It's on disc. I have. It's fucked up. It's pretty fucked up. Yeah, that scene, it's the most takes ever for one scene in a movie. It took them 147 takes for Scatman Crothers and the kid in the kitchen. It was 147 times until they got that scene right. That's fucking nuts. And it's a world record. Karen Black had Burnt Offerings, wacky role. Love her. And that's probably my favorite haunted house movie. I think Duvall did a good performance. Totally. The Shining is iconic. That slow descent into insanity works. And it's so naturally scary without having to overplay it. Everything about it just works. Great movie. Completely agree. Love Shelley in The Shining. Yeah, I know a lot of my friends are like, you're nuts for burying her. I just think she's horrible. And I got to be honest. I think that Karen Black needed to be in this fucking movie. But maybe that's me just being a huge Karen Black fan. It probably is. Mentioning 2012 in the same sense as The Shining should be illegal. Yeah, that's kind of true. But let's move on. I know we gave The Shining a ton of love. We got 2 more movies to talk about here. We're almost 2.5 hours in. So sorry, this is a megasode. This is the Spartacus of fucking Grande's Graveyards here tonight. If we get to 3 hours, which we very well fucking could, I'm going to try to be as quick as possible, but I make no promises because this next film we're going to talk about is the most underrated Stanley Kubrick movie that there ever was. And I don't care what anybody fucking says. And almost every list you will see will have this movie at or near the bottom. And that's what makes it the most underrated, is because nobody rates it as highly as I do, other than one guy, other than a David Lynch, who has this as his #1 favorite Kubrick film, funny enough. So I don't know. I like to think that me and David think alike in that way. And I totally see how it would influence someone like David when you go in to see stuff like Twin Peaks, especially, the actress of Cheryl Lee in comparison to this actress, Sue Lyon, as Sue Lyon plays the titular character in the movie, of course, from 1962. Lolita from 1962. Brief plot synopsis. A middle-aged college professor becomes infatuated with a 14-year-old girl. Now, I could probably hear what you're thinking. Probably people saying, that sounds sick. That sounds disturbing. Why would I ever want to watch that? And that was the whole idea of the movie at the time. Kubrick, of course, came off making Spartacus, which he was unhappy with. He didn't like working on it. He was a director for hire. Where's my creative control? And this was his big middle finger to Hollywood as an establishment, to the whole studio system. This was Kubrick saying, I will make anything I want, and however as fucking explicit and graphic or crazy as I want. And that's, he moved back to the United Kingdom for the rest of his living. And of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to make the #1 novel that everyone says can't be made into a movie. How could they ever make a movie of it? I'll be the guy that makes the movie of it. And it is this film, Lolita. Now, it stars, of course, James Mason and, of course, Peter Sellers. And this is the movie where he met Peter Sellers on. And, of course, they go on to do work in Strangelove together. Of course, multi-time Oscar winner Shelley Winters is in the movie. This is my favorite Kubrick cast. There's no doubt about it. Mason, Winters, Lyon, fucking Sellers. So many great fucking people in this cast. And I think it's grossly misunderstood. I really think of all of Kubrick's movies, this is the most misunderstood Stanley Kubrick movie that is out there. And I think number one, the reason for that is the subject matter alone. I think people hear that and just automatically, I don't want to watch that. That sounds sick. My grandmother was one of them. My grandmother never wanted to watch Lolita. And I remember watching it, hearing it was always one of his weaker films. And I was going into it kind of like, all right, I'm probably not going to like this very much. I not only liked it, I fell in love with the movie. I thought it was a brilliant fucking movie. Just incredible how this movie is done and pulled off. Now, it is a dark comedy in some ways, but I also see it as a very sad, dramatic love story. And I think that's the part that goes right over people's head. Now, it tells the story of Humbert Humbert, right? That is his name, James Mason's character. And the opening scene, he goes into this whole big mansion, and of course he meets Peter Sellers there, and he's there to kill Peter Sellers, and we don't know why, we don't know what's going on, but he has him at gunpoint. And there's this funny scene where they're playing ping pong together, and then after one of the rallies, James Mason pulls the gun on him, and Peter Sellers is the great line, "Boy, you're sort of a sore loser." I always look, that line has popped me. He shoots him dead, and then 4 years earlier, and when we get the rest of the movie, as we're introduced to James Mason, he is trying to look for a place to live and of course, work. And of course, he moves into this house where Shelley Winters lives with her 14-year-old daughter, played by Sue Lyon, named Lolita. And basically what happens is he becomes head over heels in love with this underage girl. He's in his early 50s and she's like 14 years old. So very taboo. In the novel, it was even more taboo. Of course, the novel from Vladimir Nabokov, where Lolita is 12 years old, which is completely like, fuck, like, holy shit. Granted, Sue Lyon, which I did put her in the thumbnail of this, she didn't look 15 years old. I believe that was her real age at the time, playing a 14-year-old. She looked older than 15 to me. I think it was a safe casting choice. They wanted so many different people to do it, but it was no, not my daughter type of thing. But I think, again, I thought they misunderstood it. This is a movie about someone who falls in love with someone who doesn't love them back. And we have multiple instances of this, not just with Humbert Humbert and Lolita, but with so many things. So at first he marries Shelley Winters' character in order to eventually get to Lolita. He marries her. She's head over heels from him. Can I make you breakfast? Can I, dance with you? She's just so head over heels in love with this guy. And he's using her. He's blatantly using her to get to his daughter. And there's some really funny comedy scenes where, she says, "Oh, when you touch me, I just go as limp as a noodle." And without missing a beat, he goes, I know the feeling. Like, this is like, yeah, when you touch me, my fucking dick goes limp too. Like, very funny. There's a scene where he's trying to get into having sex with her and can't do it unless he looks at the fucking picture of Lolita on the nightstand, which is hysterical. Like, he's like trying to, and he's like, then he looks at the nightstand, he's like, then now I can get into it. Like, it's funny as hell, man. I thought the humor in this was so underrated. But again, Shelley Winters finds out about this. You'll never have that monster. You'll never have her. She gets into this fit of rage, busts out into traffic, gets hit by a car. And then fucking James Mason, he's unaware that this has all happened. He's sitting in a bathtub. He's got a gun because he's planning on shooting Shelley Winters. And all these neighbors come in. "I'm so sorry about your wife. She's dead." And they see the gun on the fucking thing. And they're like, "Oh my God, he was going to kill himself." Like, they think he's sad over the fact that she's dead. Whereas he couldn't be the more happiest person alive, because now there's no block between he and Lolita. He can pursue it now. I thought that was really brilliant too. And then of course they do kind of have a romance. Now, it's 1962. They don't show anything explicitly, and you didn't have to. It's all very insinuated. And I know a lot of people have said Kubrick said he wouldn't have made the film had he known that he couldn't show a lot of the sexual stuff, which, again, I didn't want to see the sexual stuff. Better that you insinuate it than show that. I think that would have hurt this movie as opposed to helping it. He becomes head over heels for her, and then it's basically, this whole kind of conspiracy where he becomes so obsessed with her where she can't go out and have friends. He doesn't want her participating in the school plays. He doesn't want her going to piano lessons. He becomes a controlling person, a control freak over her life. And you get the sense that she might be in talks with somebody else who we find out is Peter Sellers' character, is Claire Quilty, who is my favorite Peter Sellers performance. Dare I said it. I love Peter Sellers as Claire Quilty in this. Just the ultimate scumbag. Just thinks his shit doesn't stink, and all the scenes he's in, he just steals, and even pretends to be another doctor at a point. So he does play multiple roles in the movie. Loved that. And I liked the whole point of it. Like here you have Shelley Winters who fell in love with a man who did not desire her but used her. Lolita, we think on paper, here's this 14-year-old girl. What a horrible thing for this guy to take advantage of her and coerce her or talk her into sexual relation. That's not the story at all. That's not the point at all. It's the other way around. She manipulates all of those around her to get what she wants. She's really kind of the mass manipulator of the film, and she uses him. She uses other boys at school. And then, of course, the one that she wants, Claire Quilty, Peter Sellers, who behind closed doors knows what's going on between he and James Mason. She loves him where he doesn't love her at all. He's just trying to make pornos. And that's what you find out towards the end of the film. She says he wanted to make weird porn films, So you find out that he was a sleazeball too. Like one person loves another, but they don't love them. And it's like a whole train. And I thought this was just a brilliant movie telling that story. I love Lolita. I think it's a great dark comedy when it wants to be, but I also think it's a very effective drama on its own 2 feet as well. It's disturbing subject matter, no doubt. But I do think this is a really, really good film. It's just brilliant. And of course, if you love Sellers and you think Sellers, is one of the great talents like I do, Sellers in this movie, when he's Claire Quilty, he's impersonating Stanley Kubrick. Like there's this great scene between he and James Mason where he's leaning over the porch and James Mason's in the chair behind him. And he goes, oh, gee, you're just such a normal guy. It's funny that two of us normal guys would be here on this normal porch. It's very similar to the, yes, Dimitri. Yes, I'm fine, Dimitri. I'm glad you're fine too, Dimitri. Yes, Dimitri. It's very similar to that. Like it was done here first and better too, where, oh, you're married, sir? I didn't know that. A normal guy like you being married to a normal woman? Well, what kind of normal thing is that? Like, where is she? Oh, well, she couldn't make it. Oh, why? Well, she was hit by a car. Gee, no wonder she's not here. Like, that's my favorite line of the whole movie. What? Gee, no wonder your wife's not here. She got hit by a fucking car. Great. I guess the way that people put Strangelove over, and I love Strangelove too, don't get me wrong, but that was number 9. That's number 2. I think the humor in this movie is just as funny, but I don't think people get it. I really believe that. I think this is a movie that just goes over people's heads, and it's always towards the bottom because of what it was marketed as and presented as, and the story on paper is, as opposed to what the film actually is. And I think that's the big thing. I think it's his most misunderstood. I think it's his most underrated. I know, crazy hot take. There is never, other than David Lynch, going to have somebody have this as high as I do. So if there's anyone that you watch that you haven't seen, I pick Lolita. I love Lolita. Long live fucking Lolita. Which is sad because Sue Lyon's gone and James Mason's gone. Shelley Winters is gone. They're all gone. A lot of people in this movie are just not alive anymore. But it is what it is. And also, I will say this. It's sad because Sue Lyon was like a real Lolita in real life. Like, she was married like 5 times, married a guy that was on death row for like murdering several people. She was like a Lolita in real life, so she was perfect for the part. She does a really good job. I don't know. I like her. And I think James Mason, it's his best role too, as he like gets breaking down towards the end, where he's told by her that she never really loved him and that she used him. And he just cries his eyes out. I love that scene. I think that's such a great scene where he's just like, fuck, like, all this time I wasted and I can't get over it. Like I think people see it as he's just trying to have sex with a younger girl. And at first, yes, that's what it is. But then he falls in love with her. And I think that's the part where it makes people uncomfortable, understandably so. It's a fucked up subject matter. There's no doubt. Kubrick asked Cary Grant to be Humbert Humbert, but he didn't want to do it. Cary Grant thought the film was disgusting and didn't want to be a part of it. So there you go. I mean, it is what it is. 3 Clockwork, 3 Barry Lyndon, 4 Clockwork. Okay. How do people involved in the remake sleep at night? It's a real mystery. A remake of Lolita? Are you talking about the Adrian? I think Adrian Lyne movie from 97. That's a piece of shit too. And for some reason, that was a fucking $62 million movie that grossed $1 million. How does that happen? Like, I never liked the remake of Lolita. Number one, because you didn't get the right actress. Dominique Swain was the wrong choice to play that part. Natalie Portman was the only person you could have got. At that time, that place, Natalie was the choice. And Natalie said no. Once she shot it down, stop production, save your $62 million that you got fucking $1 million back for. If that's what you're talking about. I don't know. I think you're talking about the Lolita remake, but that is what it is. It's not really subject matter. I just find it dull, not done to the stellar heights of his future films. I guess, yeah, maybe that too. It's smaller. You're not in space. You're not in the Overlook. You're not in a dystopian future. You're not in the fucking heat of the battle. You're not in the trenches. You're in everyday real life. That's why I like it. I think it's just so, like, all the people in it are fucking horrible. Like, all of them. It's such an ugly, cold look at society. And I think that's why I relate to it so much and can be like, wow, I've met people that are as fucked up as this. Like, it's so prevalent in society. And it's also, you look at, like I said, David Lynch, why he loves the film. It makes so much sense that the guy that considers this his favorite Kubrick movie would make Twin Peaks. It's so similar from a character and structure standpoint and dialogue, like all that. That's why I like Lolita. I think it's his least grand, like, oh, it's not a heist movie, and I don't know. I just think it's good because it's smaller. But again, I get that. I get that some people say, there's no oomph here. With the controversy, I'm surprised Polanski didn't make Lolita. Polanski wouldn't have got this right because Polanski would have just went for the gratuity, and I don't think that's what Lolita is about. Same thing with the Adrian Lyne. I can't fucking think of his fucking name. But that version sucked. Like, they over-sexualize. Like, look at Dominique Swain. Look at her legs. Look at her fucking feet. Look, like, that's all he did. They just over-sexualized her. And, okay, we got the guy from fucking Dead Ringers, and who I really like, actually. I can't think of his fucking name. Jeremy Irons. Just didn't work. There was no humor. There was nothing to say. I hate the Lolita remake. Don't even. The music theme to Lolita is such a very different dramatic. Yeah, I love the la 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 la. Love it. It's very cool. That fucking Claudio Simonetti fucking heard that and was like, boom, let's do it. Or Morricone for Bird with Crystal Plumage. The music is good. Totally. Laughing at Synthetic. I read the novel, but it was hard to get through just as much as Clockwork Orange. The novel I'm referring to is difficult with vocabulary. I tried to read the Nabokov novel. I found it incredibly hard to read. I agree with you. I've read Clockwork Orange from Anthony Burgess. I could not get through Lolita by Nabokov. I just did not think it was well. Maybe it's just a different time. It's a Russian literature, Russian piece of literature from the 50s. Maybe it's just, I don't know. Even though I'm an old soul, let's be honest. Let's see. Brooke Shield was in Pretty Baby as an underage creepy thing. Not sure if it's around anymore. Well, she was also in Alice Sweet Alice, which is right above my head, where she gets killed in the beginning, which is always a classic. Pretty Baby. Okay. Haven't seen the Adrian Lyne Vision. Wasn't thrilled with that one either. No, it fucking sucks. I hate that movie. It's well made, but it just doesn't hit those quality moments that Kubrick hit in his future releases. That's totally fair. I think everyone would agree with you. I really do. That cover of the DVD reminds me of the movie The Crush. Yeah, totally. The Crush is a better Lolita remake than this. I love that they use the heart-shaped glasses. And it's not in the film. I always thought that was so weird. I'm like, dude, that's the number one thing people remember from Lolita is that artwork, and that never happens in the movie, which I always thought was really, like, funny. The scene with the portable bed in the hotel room with the bellhop while Lolita is sleeping on the bed is funny as James Mason. Yeah, the cot. He's trying to set up the cot. I don't know. I guess I find the movie's sense of humor very funny. It's a very different sense of humor because it's dark. It's just dark. Like, Jesus, like, you went there with the humor, man. Sue Lyon had a relationship, I think, with the singer Donovan. Sue Lyon was with a lot of guys. Sue Lyon was a Lolita. I think that's why Sue Lyon was perfect in this role. And I was very, very, very impressed with her performance then, and I am now. Like, I still think she's great in the movie. I rewatched this Monday night. Still blown away by all the performances in the movie. It has the summer camp for girls with only one young boy at the camp, which is funny. That's right, the guy that checks him in. So it has its funny moments. It does. I think it's one of his most funny movies. Arguably his most funny. Yes, Ludi remake with Jeremy Irons. What a piece of crap. Portman absolutely perfect for that part. And Yen Mateo, fun fact, they approached her because The Professional was 94. So she was at that point, she was way too young. But 3 years later, that's when she started, for a Lolita, I think that would have worked. And they came to her, said, we want you. And she said, no, you're not over-sexualizing me. Granted, I think had it been Kubrick, let's say Kubrick makes Lolita in 97, I think Natalie Portman says, hell yeah, because who the hell says no to work with Stanley Kubrick? And she wasn't that big of a star at that time, so it wouldn't have been a case where she had the creative control over him, which was his big pet peeve. But I think Natalie was the only person that could have played that part. And the fact that they, after she said no, continued to try to find someone and spent $62 million on a terrible movie, no wonder you bombed. That's karma. You should have just said no. Yes, Tarantino would have focused on the feet. They did in that. If I remember, I saw the Lolita remake once, and that was enough. But they did. They fucking, that lady's feet. That the whole fucking, I'm like, all right, I get it. You want me to see your fucking toes. Like, can we get past, can we fucking make a movie? Like, God damn it. Like, oh my God. They make movies for shit like that. God damn it. Oh, frustrating remake, just in my opinion. Melanie Griffith played the Shelley Winters role in the remake. That's right. I don't mind Melanie Griffith, but you're no Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters great. OMG, I love The Professional. Oh my God. I love it. Gary Oldman's just fantastic. And Jean Reno, great movie. But the moment you've all been waiting for, 2 hours and 45 fucking minutes to get to this point. I'm really sorry. This is the longest Grande's Graveyard of the year, probably so far. I don't think we've done a show that dared hit 3 hours. It's my favorite. I own it on multiple fucking social medias. I have 2 Blu-rays of it and a 4K of it, which I will say I was very disappointed with this fucking 4K. I really was. I'm sorry. I just did not think this popped like some other 4Ks do. But of course, in my opinion, his magnum opus, the best movie that he ever made, coming into the #1 slot from the year 1971. This is A Clockwork Orange. In the future, a sadistic gang leader is imprisoned and volunteers for a conducted aversion experiment, but it doesn't go as planned. Yes, A Clockwork Orange. The first Stanley Kubrick movie that I ever saw, I remember renting this from the library at like the rifled age of 9, somewhere around there. And I think if my grandmother had known the fucking type of movie this is and what happens in the opening like 30 minutes of this movie, I'm pretty sure they would not have let me rent it. But with that being said, rented it and was just mesmerized by the movie. I was like, that's one of the best movies I've ever seen. I think at 9 years old, this was, in my opinion, the best movie ever made. It's fallen to number 2. I would say it's Dawn of the Dead still, this, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think those are the 3 best movies ever made. This is my number 2 favorite movie behind Dawn of the Dead. This is for non-horror pictures, it's the best movie ever made, in my opinion. I got the shirt, got the poster over here. If you want to see a little bit of, I don't want to move the fucking camera. I don't want to fuck things up. 4Ks, Blu-rays, whatever. I'm a diehard Clockwork Orange fan. I just love the movie. Met Malcolm McDowell, like I was saying. And why? Why is this number 1 of all the movies? I think it is because, again, it was so interesting to see him dial back and take a lower budget. He makes this epic in 2001, a movie that changed the narrative structure, a movie that takes us into outer space and is the most revolutionary sci-fi movie ever made. And here he dials it back and takes us and transition us from the 1960s into the 1970s. And at times, this is an exploitation film. We follow Alex and his 3 droogs and sitting in the car of a milk bar, trying to make up our Razoo dogs. Great novel by Anthony Burgess, by the way. If you're into reading, it's a great novel too. We follow these 4 guys causing havoc and committing crimes and, raping women and singing in the rain while they're doing it. just disturbing the way this movie opens. It is such a hook. And then, of course, what does Alex like to do to wind down? Drink drug-laced milk and listen to some beautiful Beethoven symphonies. Just interesting. I think Kubrick's best character. I think Malcolm McDowell is the best Kubrick character. It's this or Jack Torrance for me, but I do think Malcolm McDowell gets the edge. All the things from what they're wearing, the top black hats, the white suits, the fucking jock strap on the outside, the one eyelash, or I guess, yeah, eyelash it is. Thought that was brilliant. I thought that was really cool. Just incredible what they're wearing and stuff. And this whole kind of dystopian future that he creates visually is just gorgeous. That's another reason I was just so disappointed. I thought this would pop, this 4K, and it dulled the colors down. Whereas this, I actually thought it looked a little bit better on the Blu-ray. I thought the colors were a little bit brighter, but that's just me. Weird circumstance here, but I digress. Just the whole psychology of it too, where finally he's caught. You get that classic spit shot. He's taken to the prison, and then of course hears about this, oh my God, the Ludovico treatment and all the iconic scenes of them, holding his eye opens with these straps, and he actually scratched his cornea, and they're showing him all these. It'll sort of be like going to the pictures, something like that. I love that as he sees people being raped and murdered and beaten up. He sees Nazi propaganda, but with Beethoven music played over it, and then he starts just going crazy. It's a sin! It's a sin! It's a sin! What is a sin? What is a sin? To play Beethoven's Ninth over such horrible thing! It's a sin! And sir, you have to keep watching. Oh, it's wrong, sir. It's wrong. I know I've done wrong. Just the great scene in the movie theater. And it's the lines, it's funny how the colors of the real world only seem really real when you video them on a screen. Fucking amazing. It's just so good. And then, of course, the whole thing where he's put back into society after doing all these horrible things and murdering people, raping people, all these horrible crimes. He's pushed back into society after being cured, and he can't make any choices. And when man ceases to choose, he ceases to be a man. And thus, that's the whole commentary on this. I love that the movie pokes fun at Republicans and Democrats. I always love that because I don't have a dog in that fight. I love that it pokes fun at both of them. Similar way to Dr. Strangelove, at all politicians and generals, you're all fucking idiots. I love that little thing about it. But I always loved his he goes back into society and he meets the two guys that used to be his droogs that he turned on and then thus turned on him. He meets his mother and father and they've taken somebody else in, and you have this really emotional scene where he breaks down and cries. You took this stranger in over me. I'm your son. I'm your blood. They don't care that you did horrible things. You murdered and raped women. Like, what? You're irredeemable. I don't care if you're cured. Get out of my house. And it's a sad moment. You get all the way full circle. He comes upon the door of David Prowse, Darth Vader, and the fucking guy whose wife he raped and Singing in the Rain in the beginning. And again, oh, you're a victim. I read about you in the paper. I'm so sad to see. But then when he finds out that this is the same man that violated his home and violated his wife and drove her to suicide, was he's singing in the rain in the bathtub, all of a sudden he goes from martyr in this man's eyes to victim. And we see the hypocrisy of that. You can't make film this good anymore, especially with commentary like that. I love that stuff. And I just have the feeling that something horrible is going to happen to me right now. Try the wine. It was my wife's. Fucking Patrick McGee just yelling at him. Have another glass. I love Patrick McGee in it, man. He's so good. I think it's just one of the best movies ever made. It's my number 2 favorite movie ever made. I love this film. I love it to death. I love the whole finale where I was cured all right. And then, of course, after all the chaos and murder and rehabilitation and all of these things, Beethoven, usage of classical music, we end up in this scene at the end where, yeah, he won. He outsmarted the system. And he's going to be able to do whatever the fuck he wants for the rest of his life. He can kill, murder, have sex, do whatever the fuck he wants because he was cured all right. Yeah, he beat the system. He beat you. And then, of course, we play out with Singing in the Rain and Vibrant, Technicolor. Um, a true 11 out of 10. His true masterpiece, and my opinion, the second best movie ever fucking made, next to Dawn of the Dead. So, Clockwork Orange. There's no beating it, man. There really isn't. As far as Kubrick's work, it's my favorite. I love the film. It's so great. Also, probably from a rewatchability, there's no Kubrick movie I've rewatched more. It's just a fucking breeze. I take back what I said. I didn't just see The Shining in theaters. I have seen Clockwork Orange in the theaters, but that was very recently, actually less than a year ago. Let's go to comments. We have a lot. JP is here. Matilda. And what was that in reference to? I'm sorry, I don't know. Dr. Strangelove number 2, 2001 for me is number 1. Dude, awesome list. You had an awesome top 10. I think that's what made Clockwork Orange just an iconic movie, is how it's focused on the villain, Alex DeLarge. Yes, and he's great. Malcolm is great in the movie. He said in interviews, every actor gets a role that comes along that they were born to play, and Alex DeLarge is that character for me. And he was cool when I met him. I think the performance is great. He should have won an Oscar. I know Gene Hackman. I think Gene Hackman won for The French Connection, and he's great. Gene Hackman's great. The movie French Connection's great. This should have won everything, in my opinion. I just don't. Stop the string running. Stop it, please. It's a sin. It's a sin to go on for 3 hours about Stanley Kubrick movies. A Clockwork Orange for me is the best movie of all times. Oh, hell yeah. Everything is perfect. Direction, soundtrack, costume, acting, setup. He put on a screen, a dystopian reality, and basically a language. That's so true, yeah. And the language in the novel, which I have read, I saw you ask below. I love the novel. It's very, before seeing the movie, it would be very what is a razoo dog? Oh, that's somebody's minds. Oh, Korova Milk Bar trying to make up a razoo dogs. And right. Right. I've taught you much, my little droogies. It's just great. I love that shit, man. But yeah, no, I'm so happy that it's the best movie of all times for you. That is so freaking cool, because it's my number. Really, from a standard non-horror film standpoint, it's my number 1 too. It's really the best non-horror movie ever made. A bit of the old ultra violence. Yeah, it has a little bit of everything too. It does have drama. It does have horror elements. There's some horrific shit in it. It does have exploitation elements. I know the film was so controversial at the time, they pulled it from circulation in the UK. This movie didn't play after its original theatrical run in the United Kingdom. It did not get re-released until the year 2000. They waited for Stanley Kubrick to fucking die until they re-released this movie. Fucking 29 years they waited to put it back out in circulation, because Kubrick was scared. He had death threats. His family was in trouble. This movie struck a nerve, and people were like, how dare you? How dare you? But look at what it precursed. Look at all the exploitation films that went on to define the 1970s as a decade of film. Last House on the Left is the following year. I Spit in Your Grave down the road. Movies with themes that this movie, granted, those movies are nothing as good as this, but again, the exploitative element was so exploited after this. It's just, there's no doubt. The opening scene of Alice and his buddies drinking, dude, that boom, 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 boom. So epic. I love the way the movie opens. It's just great. And listen, Slasher Fred's been commenting all night, and the number 1 word that is a constant in most of them is the word iconic, and that's Stanley Kubrick. If there's a one word to describe him, I think Slasher Fred said it here in a lot of these comments. He's iconic. Make up our razoo dogs now. I did read the novel, buddy. And what's so stinking about it? It's a stinking world because there's no law and order anymore. Can you spare some cotter, me brother? Great. This movie shows the villain cannot be redeemed even when you think they can. Yes, and that's a lot of people miss that. Have you read the novel by Anthony Burgess? Do you think the movie has a moral, or what is the final message? Yes to the first question. I think the final message is, if man ceases to choose, he does cease to be a man. Listen, there is no doubt what he did was deplorable, and he should have been in jail forever. But the whole idea of, we're going to change the whole fucking thing, we're going to cure this guy, that's just an asinine idea, and obviously it was going to blow up in their fucking faces. And that's, of course, the bash on the other wing. I thought that was really great. And of course, by the end, he's taking advantage of the system. I'm looked as a victim by some people, and you people know that I'm not a victim, but you have to fucking feed me steaky wakies until fucking I croak over and die, because obviously it'll make you look bad if you don't treat me properly. So he beat the system. He played both sides. And by the end, yeah, I was cured all right. I fucking win, bitch. And of course, the last thing you see is him fucking some lady while all these like Victorian people in costumes are watching in this white room. He won. He's celebrating, having a fuck off to, he wins, man. Definitely my number one of my all-time favorite films. I'm with you, man. Here you go. Alpha and me have the same number one movie ever, Dawn of the Dead. And one of his other all-time favorite movies is Clockwork Orange. So we're right on the same page there. Come and get it. Come and get it in the yobbles if you have any yobbles. I'm going to wake up my neighbors at 11 o'clock at night. What'll it be, Mr. Torrance? You set them up, Lloyd. I'll knock them down. Some of the bit of the old Ludwig van. I love it, man. The scene where Alex is forced to watch a movie montage is such a great, oh my God, it is. It's wow. Like, I love how that's done, man. And I love at first he's like, it'll be like going to the pictures, and then it's fucking not, it's a sin. People saying hello. I don't know much about Kubrick, but I think you would have made Kubrick proud, and it didn't take you 100 and something takes. It only took me 3 hours. You're going to watch Barry Lyndon by the time I fucking finish the stream. I'm sorry. I did not mean to go so damn long, but it just happens. The music theme heard in the movie would later be used as the theme to The Shining. That's right. Yep. They just slowed it down in The Shining, I think. Grande Kubrick took McDowell in a car. Yes, that's right. They bought the rights. And my dad, for the longest time, didn't believe that story. He was like, no way. And when we met him, I said, Malcolm, tell my dad the fucking story. And he told the story. My dad was like, what? Like he was always like, no way that happened. Violence of Clockwork is so theatrical and almost operatic that it kind of makes the movie more effective. I agree. For a fucking A-class director to have violence like that in a movie was just unheard of. Like that's usually a gimmick by lesser directors to get you to come and see their movie. Oh, okay, the movie wasn't the greatest technically, but wow, those kill scenes, that violence. But for a guy that knew what he was doing to do that stuff was like, wow. Same thing that's why I was so happy when he made a horror movie. Wow. Like you think horror movies suck and you think they can't be artistic and stylistic? Boom. I'll make this. Theory proven false. I learned a lot. Only. Hell yeah. Mateo, when I was feeding my kids, I was showing them how to open their mouth like Alex does to the minister. I love that, man. That's so funny. Steaky Wakes. I saw this film on TV when I was probably 18 or 19. I bought it on DVD at the time. Such a unique and mind-bending movie. Jim Broadbent was so cool during the Ludovico scene. Oh, dude, yes. Very underrated actor. Now, let me ask you, I don't know if you were in the UK when you were 18 or 19, but that, I wonder, because I know the DVD didn't go back into circulation in the UK until 2000. Do you have any recollection of that? Like, because I would be so curious to know from someone who was there. It took me a few watches before I even began to understand what the fuck anybody was saying in the film. Yeah, it's funny. When I had to watch the film a few times to get through the novel. Then I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And the novel is a completely different ending. Like he has a son. There's a whole court case at the end of it. It's so different, the novel, like towards the end. But man, the film is just tough to top. I don't believe it. The police, nothing up our sleeves. Little Alex, the police job of job age. Yeah. I like when Aubrey Morris goes, you weren't supposed to be at school today. Yes. You're supposed to be there. Yes. Yes. Little Alex. Yes. I love Aubrey Morris, man, who would go on to be in like Wicker Man and shit. Like, oh man, he's great. There's also a scene where Alex and his buddies are in the nightclub. That's right. I heard about you. I know what you've done. So you're back, eh? Not over my dead corpse, you will. Yeah. I think the Droogs cricket outfit and the Singing in the Rain bit were Malcolm's ideas, according to an interview. Who knows? Yeah. The Singing in the Rain was him because they couldn't figure out what he should do at that point, and he just improv'd it. And Kubrick said, hop in the car. We're going to go buy the fucking rights. And when I did talk to Malcolm McDowell, he told a great story. And I don't know if he's told that story elsewhere. I'm sure he has, but I've never seen him tell the story elsewhere than in person. He told the story of he encountered Gene Kelly like 20 years after a clock, or no, I don't know when Gene Kelly died. He did encounter Gene Kelly like years later at a party. And he was like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Malcolm. And Gene Kelly walked right past him. Didn't shake his hand, didn't give him a dead fish, just walked right past him because Gene Kelly saw it as a disgrace to what he believed was his greatest, contribution to cinema and Singing in the Rain and one of the most famous musicals ever made. To turn that on its head, to make it a scene where someone rapes someone else in front of their husband, Gene Kelly was just not happy with that. So yeah, Malcolm always tells that story, which I think is just crazy. Please put your hand over your mouth. It's very revolting. Chocolate brand called Korova. Okay. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's very cool. Came with Uncle and Here equals trumpets and devil trombones. Cut the shit, Sonny. Grande, Kubrick's family got death threats. Yes, they did. Oh, man. There's so many of these. I'm just trying to get through these. If you have ever seen a trailer, it kind of shows you the flash montage scenes of it. That's right. I guess the government are hypocrites too, right? Yeah, everyone's a hypocrite. The fucking people that thought he was a victim are hypocrites. The government are hypocrites. You're all idiots. It's it's just like Strangelove. You're all fucking idiots. This guy, you let this guy who was locked up for good, you had him, you let him get out, and now it's going to be even worse. It's the whole morality tale of how this guy beat the system, and of course did it in a very entertaining way with a little bit of the old Ludwig van and ultra violence. This has to be a record-breaking Ronnie's Graveyard episode. Love it. It's actually not. I think the longest Grande's Graveyard were like 3 hours and 15 minutes. So unless we went another 15 minutes, which I don't think it's going to happen. Trailer's great, splicing images of the eyeball only on the Graveyard. Too sweet, peace, yeah. Grande, have you ever seen McDowell and The Caller? Recently watched it. Wasn't that bad. I've not seen it. No, only. There didn't seem to be any fanfare about it at the time in terms of it finally being available because it was controversial. I was aware that this was an iconic movie. Okay, yeah. So, but it wasn't. I don't think it was in circulation in the UK because, like I said, because of the whole death threats things with Stanley and his family. But yeah, no, that is Stanley Kubrick's top 10. A 3-hour epic Grande's Graveyard. Wow, absolutely freaking wild. I can't believe this went so long. I did not plan for it, but I'm glad it did. It seemed like you guys had fun. Showing the painting of the teeth when the woman gets hot with the statue is genius. That's right. Yeah, and the giant penis thing. And he's like, stop it. Stop that now. What are you doing in here? I love that, man. It's great. Awesome episode. Thank you, Brittany. And Brittany, thank you so much for rocking the new Graveyard shirt. I don't have many left now. I'm almost sold out of them. So very humbled by all of you guys. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world. It does. Hit the like button, guys. Thank you so much. There was a great Mad Magazine issue for this movie. Very cool. Only on the Graveyard. Good night, guys. Everybody, thank you so much. I had a fun time tonight ranking my top 10 Stanley Kubrick movies. If you catch the replay and this extravaganza that is now officially longer than Barry Lyndon, please comment down below. Let me know your top favorite Kubrick movies. Thank you so much for the support as always, and we will catch you next time only on the Graveyard. Too sweet, peace. Good night, everybody. Cheers to the weekend.